Welcome back to the channel, everyone, and today we'll be reacting to Wonder's video on the Illuminati Exposed video. This one is the one I'm really interested in. I've been really critical of Oz for a lot of reasons, and I'll talk to you guys more about that one in Oz's video coming up. And yeah, I will admit, because a lot of people have mentioned in the comment section, Oz was most likely abused by Illuminati, or really was. Now I have a lot less details than quite a few people, because I don't follow the Twitter, I don't follow the Discord directly, I don't follow all of the stuff that you guys have been compiling for the last year, right? A lot of people in the comments have a lot more information than I do. Okay. So just keep that in mind. I am just a reaction channel. I don't go into major deep dives of this stuff. I usually react to comedy stuff. So this was me jumping into a new category, and I probably should have picked an easier topic. But, it is what it is. And I definitely appreciate all the people disagreeing with me in my comments. So keep doing that. Keep telling me I'm an idiot. And I did call Oz an idiot. And I could have used a different word. I could use naive, right? But to me, they're both the same word. Naive is just a nicer way to say idiot. So I'm not going to take back what I said. I'm not going to change what I said. You can take it and leave it. You can downvote the video. That's entirely up to you. You can tell me in the comments I'm a dumbass. Also fine. Fair enough. All right. This is just my opinion on the video as I see it. All right. That's the beauty of YouTube and the internet. You don't have to agree with everyone, and you can call people out when you think they're being stupid. That's all there is to it. Now, I'm really interested in this video because a lot of people assume that Oz was the one who was financially abused, but I actually think it was Wonder, because when Oz, and this is why there's a big difference for me. When Oz first moved to Colorado, he was able to put money and buy a house. You can't do that with no money. Whereas Wonder moved to Colorado to live in Oz's house, not Illuminati's. Yeah, he was living with her, but it was Oz's house, because apparently Illuminati wasn't paying anything towards it. So this is all Oz's stuff for the most part. As far as I'm concerned, everything that was at this location was Oz's house, and Illuminati was a freeloader, okay? It doesn't matter if Illuminati was making 30 times the amount Oz was. The fact is, she was probably living there for free. And that was part of the problem. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But in this case, it's because Wonder moved to Colorado to be there, but he had nothing. So she ended up controlling every aspect of his life, whereas at least Oz technically had an out. He could have kicked everyone out of his house, but he didn't. So that's where my difference, how I differ from a lot of people, I guess, because a lot of people are saying that a lot of the other creators completely went in totally different directions on this and focused on the mental aspect directly, whereas I focus more on the actual financial aspect as well as the common sense kind of aspect of things. Whereas, what I grew up, well, I also grew up, and something you guys should probably know is I grew up with a financial background to a degree. I started doing finances at like 12. So I had a whole different experience at 18 than I guess the majority of people who don't learn how mortgages work until they're like 30, apparently. So anyway, yeah, let's get into the Wonder video. I will have a chapter at the bottom so you can skip this nonsense, but I figured I'd make a few extra things clear because a few people brought up quite a few things in my other videos, which is fine, and keep doing that. Don't take this as a me apologizing video, because I'm not. All right, let's get into the Wonder version. So, okay, here's the thing. Actually, I do want to ask this question. If a video is monetized versus non-monetized, does it throttle it? Because I've never even understood that. I have plenty of videos that are monetized, and a ton of videos that aren't monetized. And my non-monetized videos get way more, what are they called? Impressions? There we go. Way more impressions than my monetized videos. So I don't think that's a thing. I think the problem is with this thing, and this is a completely random tangent, is that people don't understand how YouTube actually works. They think they do, but they don't. YouTube randomly changes stuff, and the main thing that YouTube uses to move videos is AI now. They've been using AI for for at least a couple of years, in one form or another. That's what their algorithm is. It's basically a giant managed AI system, and ChatGPT wasn't the first use of an AI. But I don't think people realize how monetized and throttling work. I think this is just, it doesn't matter if it's monetized. You can monetize anything. If I could monetize this video, I would. I'm not going to because I can't. I don't own any of this stuff. It's all copyright. But by the way, you should probably know a lot of reaction channels don't make a lot of money on actual content. They make money if you give super thanks and subscribe to their like Patreons and stuff. That's where a lot of reaction content makes money. Anyway, but yeah, I don't know. This thing bugged me. I don't think this is real, and I think they believe it's real, but I don't think it is.
Hello, my name is Wonder, as I'm sure many of you know by now. Whether you've known me in the past for my content or a friend or neither, you're probably here to watch and hear the other side of a story involving me and my former colleagues that came out this week. I won't try to show face or sugarcoat anything in this video.
I have a serious question. Is Wonder blind in one eye? That's why they cover their hair all the way, or is this just like a fashion thing that I'm too old to know?
As that would honestly be a disservice to myself. As you can already tell, my eyes are very much drifting off the screen. That is because I have put together a script so I can kind of keep my thoughts in line. It's not to say I don't feel genuine about any of this, it's just...
I mean, that makes sense. A lot of you should definitely have a script. Others you'll end up doing stupid things like me and calling Oz an idiot 15 times in one video.
I need these kind of things to keep my brain from being erratic and going anywhere. So if it looks kind of odd and like I'm looking away, that's the reason why. This type of stuff makes me highly uncomfortable, but it is something that needs to be said. A couple days ago, a creator, a former friend, and an employer named by Blair, aka Illuminati, made...
Okay, so this was, I probably should have reacted to this video second versus the one topic video, because it looks like this video came out way earlier than I had originally thought.
A video discussing a few controversial topics she'd been the spotlight of. After discussing her first two controversies in her video, she moved on towards another topic.
Okay, first off, I did watch the Illuminati video. Unfortunately, I didn't react to it, so I'm not going to add it on here. And that video... I watched that after the first three videos. So if you're part of my comment section and you watched one of the Internet Anarchist videos, I didn't watch the Illuminati Exposed video until after that. And that video was awful in every way. Like, yeah, she apologized to Legal, and that's where it should have ended. Everything after that was just literal insanity. And then, you know, in Wonder's case, she released that note, which... It's a bad thing to do, and I understand that, but I also understand YouTubers, unfortunately, and a lot of YouTubers will do literally anything to bash another YouTuber, especially if they are a bigger YouTuber, which is the worst part of this. So obviously at the time, Illuminati was the biggest YouTuber group, and a lot of YouTubers, I don't care who says anything, they love to punch down, and it's the dumbest concept in the world, but they just love to do it. It's like this weird thing of always needing to be on top. So it seems to be a certain personality trait of certain creators. I don't know.
A group channel by the name of Sad Milk. Accusations against a former member, and lastly, me. And as you may have noticed, I take up
right, okay.
fairly lengthy portion of her video. Now, I would like to...
Yeah, the 32:18 mental health part, that was something that didn't need to be in that video. I understand why she put it in the video, because it was trying to draw sympathy to herself and try to paint Wonder as a crazy person. But that's not how you're supposed to go about it. But the thing is, I don't think Illuminati cares. I just don't think she gives a crap about anyone.
To say that the beginning of the Sad Milk discussion does begin with a former member known by the Clique who came forward to express his experiences with Blair and how he did not want to associate with her. Upon seeing a former member come forward, I felt the strong emotional urge to speak out on my experiences with Blair. I had kept quiet for 2 years out of fear and NDA threats, but seeing...
So that's the thing. That was the one thing that really bugged me. So Blair has everyone sign NDAs, right? But I don't think Blair herself understands how NDAs work. NDAs are just specifically to keep your company in like a good PR standpoint, right? You can't really stop. You can stop an employee because I have an NDA. Okay, so I worked for a client. That's my NDA, by the way, is still active, even though I haven't worked for the company for 10 years. It's active for another 2 years now, because the way it was set up is. I effectively became a contractor specifically for a specific job, and my NDA was I specifically can't tell you the name of the client. That's the only thing that the NDA covers. But and that one's enforceable because it's a very specific thing meant for a specific person. But it's not me like it's not like a standard NDA. A company NDA just means you can't like disparage the company in any way, but that doesn't mean you can't tell your story if you were abused by that company. That's not how an NDA works. NDAs don't hold up against abuse in court, which is ridiculous. You can't be like, yeah, I signed an NDA, but then they beat me senseless for 42 weeks while I worked for them, and now they're suing me because, you know, they're saying that I wasn't allowed to tell anyone that I was beat senseless by them. That's the dumbest thing ever. That's not how NDAs work. Those don't hold up in court, and that's where, you know, I think Wonder got stuck is because they thought they couldn't say anything about what happened to them when it had nothing to do with Illuminati's LLC company, which is what none of that would have held up. But, you know, the threat of an NDA is actually pretty big because when you get that piece of paper in front of you, it looks very intimidating just from a legal standpoint because, you know, the lawsuit from an NDA, if you lose one, is bad. A lot of times it can bankrupt you. So that's where a lot of people freak out. And, you know, yeah, on the outside, it's very easy for me to say that was stupid. But the reality is I also have had an NDA, and it's not as simple all the time, especially depending on how the NDA is structured. And in this case, there was definitely a lot of legal jargon from Blair's lawyer. I don't know who Blair's lawyer is, but man, they are either a cutthroat crazy person or she didn't have a lawyer for a while and she was using something like ChatGPT and doing all of this herself, and then she got a lawyer towards the end. There's a lot of missing questions here because the problem with the internet is we only have certain aspects of it. We have what these guys say, we have what Blair said, and then we have the lawsuits which have more detail in them. Madcaster has access to a lot of that stuff, but Madcaster also did the smart thing and actually, you know, blocked out and got rid of tons of personal data. But that's the data we're actually missing. We're missing a lot of the personal data, but that's not part of the legal battle, so that's not something that Madcaster needs to tell anyone, and probably shouldn't because that's all personal data, and potentially, even though he's a lawyer and he can get all this stuff publicly, he may not be able to share it, you know? So it's a whole thing with that. But yeah, the NDA thing was the big thing.
Seeing Click come forward and kind of stick his foot in that pool, and that fear allowed me the emotional strength I needed to come forward.
So the only thing here would be is if Wonder actually broke NDA in some way, it's different. Okay, so he was responding to Oz, or was he responding to the Clique? Because if he was responding to the Clique, the Clique isn't a very good example of this coming forward because the Clique is in another country. Illuminati's not going to sue the Clique. She doesn't have enough money. This is not Coca-Cola suing Pepsi in Japan, you know? This is not the same thing. She does not have enough money for an international lawsuit, which is why she didn't go after the Clique. She would have if the Clique lived in any other U.S. state. Because the Clique came with so many receipts, it was ridiculous.
with a story of my own. I'll have my thread up on the screen here, but as you can tell, I was initially pretty emotional. You can also find a follow-up twit longer after she had made her video in the description, as well as a Google Drive where I'll be providing my evidence as presented in the video. Brought a lot of pain front and center. One thing you might notice in my thread, and that Blair rightfully points out, is that a large portion of my thread is in fact anecdotal, aside from the one image I shared of.
Yeah, I mean, anecdotal, man, I can't say that word. That type of evidence is it's he said, she said stuff. So proving that in court is going to be a lot harder to do, even with videos. So let's see if Oz has some actual receipts for this.
Of her living conditions. A photo in which she claims I took myself in a room that was strictly off limits due to it being for unpacking. A room in which I actually never set foot in once, and an image that was sent to me showing the living conditions of the house that she was subjecting my friend to. There will be more on that later in the video. So yes, I did not provide receipts to back my claim. This is not by accident or an attempt to tell lies about my story. My first reason was so Blair couldn't pick apart my records and falsify the truth.
Yeah, but the other reason is most people, and this is normal, by the way, most people don't keep records of every interaction they have with supposed friends, okay, or partners. They don't keep interactions. They don't record everything in their house 24/7. That's just not normal. Some people do. But that's not normal.
Truth. The second reason is due to some of the information regarding the car and my employment and its repossession. Some of that information is part of a pending legal matter, and I did not want it to become front and center.
Yeah, this thing, that's the part that's really getting me, was how that car was repossessed. It seems most likely that Blair stole the car while it was still in good standing during the loan. There's no way she could have, her contract didn't say anything about keeping the car in any one state, so that can't be a thing, right? So I don't know how that worked.
Online. But since Blair has made this information known, I will be providing receipts for that topic as well. So while initially I was anecdotal, today I'm going to show you every receipt I have that not only combats, disproves, or proves my claims, but also debunks her narrative that my friend, Oz Media, has.
So this is the only hazard of doing a video like this. Yeah, it will generate money. It generates extra help online via like donations and things, but it could hurt Wonder's case in the long run, because there's a difference between putting the video out and forcing another a set of lawyers to go through something like discovery. Now, the upside here, though, is this gives a much better picture of Wonder's plight. So if he has a GoFundMe, he can actually raise funds for that lawyer. But this is still a risky move to put out videos like this, knowing this is going to be a lawsuit, most likely.
Has been supporting her throughout this. I'd like to note that in Blair's video, she does not show or touch base on the majority of Oz Media's Twitter thread, unlike the Click, One Topic, and I. I'd like to keep these screenshots up for a moment for you to.
Okay, this is talking about, so this is Oz talking about the Sad Milk Project, saying everything in it was a mess. It sounded like everything in it was a mess. It's very hard to do collab channels on YouTube and not have it turn into basically a giant circus. It happens all the time. It does work occasionally, but you know, it only tends to work for the super chill like podcasts. Mudahar, for instance, has a decent one with Oompaville and Nuxtaku, but they also don't like interact with each other in their normal like day-to-day, like, well, not their day-to-day. They don't really react normally like with each other on other channels, so they have like this weekly podcast, but it's a little bit different because it's just like kind of chill and relax, more or less, whereas they're not doing all this crazy scheduling stuff. A lot of times they don't even have every person there. They just throw in random people and grab guest stars
to read at your own discretion. There will also be a link to it down below. I believe when you want people to know the truth and form opinions of either side, you should come forward with both stories. It's why I don't.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem here. So Illuminati, after all this stuff came out, never responded again. So we don't know. So we know a lot of what happened from these guys' perspective, and a lot of it makes sense because of a lot of it matches up, right? which is great. I mean, we have one side that has a lot of stuff matching up. Illuminati never rebutted any of this stuff. She just went silent after basically all this stuff. She kept pushing out her videos, primarily because she had sponsors she had to appease. And then after that, she went dark. Well, after the H-Bomber guy video. But for the most part, her channel's been dead for about 2 months now. That's when I say dead, I mean she hasn't put out a video in 2 months. And that's dead for her channel. But that doesn't mean necessarily her channel has died. That could be a legal thing. So her lawyers may have basically told her she is no longer allowed to post videos until all of this stuff is solved in court. And it is possible that she may win in court, at least against Oz, and partially against Wonder. Not for defamation, most likely, but just for the money aspect, because at least in Oz's case, it does sound like Oz did borrow money from her, and that's going to be the crux of that lawsuit, most likely. Felix the Kit Kat, there's no way that one's going to win. And I fear that if Oz wins this next case, which seems to be a defamation one, she's just going to turn around and sue for the money itself, which will probably win, which is a whole different case. So she won't be able to sue for the same things because it'll probably be dismissed and she probably won't be allowed to. It's hard to say because the judge keeps giving her chances from what I've been told. So, which is really weird. Like usually you're given maybe like so you're usually when you when you make a sue someone, okay, for whatever reason, usually you put your complaint in or whatever, and then they can counterclaim, etc. And then sometimes you have a chance, not always, but sometimes you have a chance to re-amend it. But she was given like 3 chances to re-amend her complaint multiple times. So I don't know what's up with that judge, but yeah, it just seems a little weird. But maybe there's information that's not popping up in the Madcaster files, which doesn't make sense because he seems to have access to everything.
I don't harbor any hatred or resentment towards anyone who holds a negative opinion of me after watching a video. I've been there. I've done that. We all have probably done that once or twice on the internet. It's literally the internet. And even after this, if you don't like me or agree with me, I have a personal bias, obviously, because...
Yeah, and that's the same with my stuff. I have a personal bias against what Oz did in a lot of ways, and a lot of people do not like that. And that is totally fine with you. Go ahead and downvote my video. It makes no difference to me. This is just my opinion. Same with he's exactly right. It's the internet. No one's gonna 100% agree, and those that do 100% agree, that's just so boring on the internet. I don't know. My view of Wonder is going up.
Because it involves me, but I'll respect your opinion nonetheless. But before I say anything, I'd like to state a few things. Something else that I believe is very important. Whether you hate someone or not, to bring up someone's personal mental health as an arguing point is quite frankly a low blow. And it's not—
Yeah, that's true. That is a low blow, but it's not unheard of on the internet. Especially on YouTube. Man, people do that stuff all the time.
not your story to tell. If anyone's going to explain my mental health, it is personally going to be me. You can argue I was doing the same when I revealed the state of her home, but I'd like to note that Blair has a dog named Casper that suffers from a
Casper being okay.
disease known as pica. Blair has mentioned on
Yeah, my cat has that.
numerous times that she takes care of a special needs dog. I'll have the definition here on the screen, but essentially it's a disorder where a dog grows anxious at times and—
Yeah, my cat constantly chews on door frames. Last time I moved, I think it cost like $10,000 to fix all the door frames and doors that the cat chewed on and destroyed, not to mention all the furniture. Actually, he has a thing where he just loves licking things, which might be a different thing as well, but he also chewed on entire corners of things, which wrecked entire custom molding. Yeah, I don't know how to fix that, but yeah.
and eats random objects. This is not a safe environment for a dog to live in. Before I speak further,
I guess the problem with dogs versus cats is cats are less likely to actually eat objects like entirely, whereas dogs can eat entire like plastic toys and things like that, whereas my cat just move toys around but like to eat the walls.
I'd like to provide a trigger warning involving the topics of pedophilia and harm towards children. If you're not comfortable, you may...
That's probably in reference to the click video.
Click off or head to the timestamp provided on screen. I will not be going in depth on the allegations against Click. Click has made a very thorough video which you can find in the description below if you'd like to watch, where he disproves these rather disgusting claims made towards him. But a personal question I would like to ask: if Blair had the information and documented evidence on a Discord server that, as she depicted, cultivated files, and truly believe this, why did she wait 3 years to come?
See, this is the thing. That's where this right here is why I think it was all a setup in the beginning. Blair set up this whole thing, or it was a very lucky coincidence, and she just held on to the data because she just creates folders on people to use as blackmail, which is crazy. I mean, okay, it's crazy. It's smart to do. It's bad to do, but you know, if you have a habit, let's say Blair was burned in the past before any of this YouTube stuff, okay? What do a lot of people do? If you're burned once, what do a lot of people do? Well, they don't want to ever be burned again, so they start doing the opposite of that. So they'll start, every time they have a relationship with someone, they'll start collecting data on them and stuff and putting it off to the side so they can use it at, you know, in the most opportune or worst point. Like during a fight, they'll bring up the worst possible things about that person that they hate the most about themselves. And that's what will happen. And it will just basically smash them into the ground with, you know, and wreck their mental health even further, which, you know, you're like, well, I did my job. I saved this obviously horrible information on you specifically for this one moment to make it even worse. And that's ridiculous. But this is where I think, though, that the click was set up, because who holds on to data like this specifically? Because a lot of people, this would be like a mandatory reporter type thing, right? Who holds on to this type of data? Someone who potentially made it all up.
Forward. Why did she allow the click on Sadmilk or play games with him in the free time? Why did she put a link for help for anyone affected by such actions of child grooming, yet didn't use her platform to speak up on a server and creator that is active to this day? If she were to argue a fear of retaliation, what is the reason?
Well, there was no fear of retaliation for her. She was a big channel. Why would she had enough people to and Click at the time had like let's see here. She had what 1.1 million at the time, and the Click had somewhere in the area of like 300,000. Yeah, a lot of people say subscribers don't matter, and technically that might be true if you subbotted your way to 1 million subscribers. So maybe Illuminati only has 100,000 or had 100,000 subscribers at the time, and she actually had 1 million bot subscribers. We don't know, but there was some interesting thoughts on that during the r/ event. So some people mentioned that she was likely subbotting, but the problem is the person who mentioned she was subbotting was also an unreliable narrator. So I don't know. But yeah, that's
content bringing
that's
light
a
to
good
the
point,
horrors
Wonder.
of companies pretty much every week. Arguably, if she knew this was ongoing, knew the extent, and then said nothing, she would have arguably by proxy been responsible for any further victims in such a server. One more subject.
She wouldn't have been responsible for it, but she wouldn't have see, that's hard to say. So it wouldn't have been her fault if she didn't say anything. She's not a mandatory reporter. That's the thing. She's not required to report on this. She can distance herself from the groups and everything, but it's not, I mean, and the problem was she wasn't distancing herself from the group, which is why I keep thinking this is most likely fake. But I mean, she wouldn't be required to. She could just, you know, delete all those people and leave. It's not like the problem is she didn't leave, so there is that. But I mean, a lot of people like to put a lot of additional authority on YouTubers, and a lot of people in YouTube are high school and college dropouts who have started a channel and got lucky.
I'd like to touch base on is the call that took place between Blair, OT, and the Click, and a Reddit post that I made following their departure. I was indeed present for this call. This was a meeting designed to iron out the differences and tension in Sadmilk, as not only did our audience deserve it, but we as friends deserve it to ensure our friendship lasted. During this call, Blair began to become...
Yeah, see, that's the thing. This whole thing with the the crazy person in the Clicks Discord server, happened in 2020, and it was first brought to light in 2023, which, yeah, that's leading to basically there's just no evidence that any of this is real, or actionable in any way. So that's the thing.
Highly irritable and raised tensions where they did not need to be raised. I'd like to clarify that OT did not speak over her out of disrespect, but out of a minor Discord delay, to which she said, and I quote, "Shut the f up and let me talk for once."
Okay, I see where the issue is for that. See, that wasn't mentioned before. There was a Discord delay during the call. Yeah, that does happen. Geez, though. I mean, I kind of wish that call had been recorded. It does fall in line though with that recording that Azothan had. The problem with Azothan's recording is it seemed to be like kind of cut up a bit.
I remember it clearly. It was very nasty, and it was the first fatal blow to Sadmoke and the events that transpired and led up to today. OT, rightfully, left the call without a word at this point. Flick, however, tried to remain in the call and mitigate his intentions were for the betterment of the group, but...
See, I think here the biggest problem with this group is the Click, One Topic, Wonder... not Oz, at least at this point, and Salty. So the Click, Wonder, One Topic, and Salty, and I don't know if there's anyone else in this group, were doing this primarily for fun. They were doing this as like a light thing. They weren't putting a ton of effort into it, because don't forget, everyone also has all their real channels to deal with, and they kind of want to do this for fun. Whereas Blair, and by extension Oz at the time, because Oz was kind of her tech dog at this point, for now, were doing it for money. You know, Oz may not have been doing it for money. Oz may have had other reasons. They might have been dating by this point, and that would be another reason. But Blair was likely doing this only for money. She wanted to make this as profitable as possible, as quickly as possible. And this meeting was most likely she was losing money. There's a good chance that she wasn't making any profit like a lot of her other channels did from the beginning. We could say my channel's profitable, but it's not. It's not going to make my initial investment in like my green screen and my camera and my mic for like 2 years. Unless for some reason people start liking my channel versus just constantly bashing me in my comments. Although maybe people hate watch me, I don't know. But I think for Blair, this was all about money. And I think for these guys, it was a fun thing they could do with friends. They didn't care as much about whether or not it was profitable. They wanted money from it. Sure, everyone wants money from their channel, especially, when you're putting a lot of extra effort into it. But they weren't focused on the money. And that's where the big difference between the two sides were. So she was probably freaking out because she was probably losing money. And I think they weren't on the same page, and I think that was the problem. And the other part of the problem is, I think what Blair was probably doing was she was trying to pretend that she wasn't in it for the money, but she kept harping on how she kept putting money into it and no one else did, even though they eventually paid her back. But I think that was the problem. So anyway, that's my 2 cents for the moment on that.
Blair kept berating him. I have never heard Click, a very extroverted and talkative man, remain so quiet. I know I'm trying to read this off a script, but if I only had one way to describe this call, it was a very dark call. OT departed in the following days. After this, Click departed from Sadmoke as well. Audience members grew confused about this, so she took to Reddit to falsify a narrative which you can read on screen. I joined in as well on this. I explained how those who departed did not help us in numerous ways, and that it all fell onto us.
Interesting. I think this is where Oz said they lied. And this is part of the problem, though. Oz is likely telling the truth now, but because Oz lied in the past, and it's on record that he lied, it's hard to say 100% if this video doesn't have lies filtered in about Illuminati. And while Illuminati definitely, and Blair's definitely, I'm just going to go with Blair, has definitely proven that she's very unreliable and very vindictive, that still doesn't put past the fact that, we can't 100% guarantee that everyone here is being truthful, because it is the internet. A lot of people will be like, well, I'm going to automatically believe this person. Well, that's the problem with commenters and other YouTube channels like me who are covering things like this. we don't have 100% confirmation that any of this is true. And that's where it's very risky for us. Not necessarily to cover it, just to keep pushing a narrative out, for Wonderstruck or for Blair or against Wonderstruck or against Blair or whatever. And I think that's a little bit that's something that a lot of channels and commentators should keep in mind when they are watching YouTube in general. It's not there's nothing really to back up what we say from a legal standpoint. That's why, reaction channels get away with so much stuff. That's why, drama channels get away with basically throwing out accusations against people and writing exposés on random YouTubers with no real full legal consequences if they get their information wrong. I know, it's just something to think about.
I'd like to point out that I directly lied on this post. Flick, One Topic, and the others did in fact assist in SadMilk greatly, but they were growing increasingly frustrated and burnt out as what had started as a fun project of friends had turned into a content farm.
Yep, that's the thing. Illuminati really loves her content farms. And there's nothing directly wrong with a content farm. A lot of people don't like them, but the reality is a lot of people do. A lot of people would rather sit there and have one creator that they really like talk for 8 hours a day, always uploading new stuff every day, and they really do like those. And that's what a lot of viewers love. They love content farms, even if it's low effort stuff, and that's just true. And it's a stupid concept, but it's the same reason people watch their favorite TV shows, on repeat, right? They just love the same content over and over and over again. And there's nothing directly wrong with that, and I understand a lot of YouTubers hate it, but and especially in the NewTuber section, in the partnered YouTuber section, they absolutely hate content farms. But, it's just a concept that works on YouTube and it makes money. That's it. It makes money, and that's what a lot of people do YouTube for, and that is to make a living, and a lot of people make a good living on YouTube.
We were trying to cram recordings in, take time out of our lives, and make content we didn't enjoy at this point. But where this reached its climax of enough is enough was when members would take time out of their day to show up to recordings upon their own busy channels and lives, only to find video and audio recordings of entire SadMilk episodes had been deleted due to quote-unquote not being good enough.
How do you make something not good enough for a meme channel? I mean, that's almost like the only thing worse than a meme channel is basically what I'm doing is a reaction channel and the discussion channels. We don't have scripts. We just randomly talk nonsense for 2 hours on a video. I don't know. I mean, that alone would be really annoying. I would basically quit the first time any of my videos were deleted as a group. I would have been like, nope. If you guys are going to make this into a huge crazy thing, I'll do my own editing on my own channel and just carry on there. I wouldn't subject myself to like 10 hours of deleted video a week. That's just a waste of time and effort.
I believe this context is needed and sheds much needed light on a post I made out of malice towards my former colleagues. I believed Blair had my best interest at heart and was being thorough with me. I have since been proven that this was far from the case.
So yeah, this is where I think Wonder is was more in a more abusive position, at least initially, because don't forget, Wonder basically came into this with nothing, no money, nothing. So every aspect of their life was controlled, whereas Oz was still abused at the end, most likely, but not at the beginning, in my opinion, just because Oz had money at the beginning. So he wasn't financially abused right off the bat. Because there's no way he would have been able to put a down payment on a house with nothing. So he definitely had a lot more money than a lot of people at the age of 20, which is fine. That's not a problem here. And we'll get more into that later.
Time we set the record straight on the matter. As stated before, my name is Wonder, and this is my response to Blair's Illuminati Exposed. Thank you for being here, and I appreciate you taking the time to hear both sides of the story. In Blair's video, she mentions how she bore the brunt of a lot of the behind-the-scenes works to SadMilk due to nobody stepping up to the plate to support her. One specific issue she brought to the table in particular was late payments on behalf of the contracted talent of SadMilk. As I have seen other milkmen and their bank statements, I'd like to focus on her allegations directed towards me in regards to delayed payments. Here is the precise quote referenced.
And I also got stuck footing the bill too.
So here's the thing though. It sounds a lot though like Illuminati was trying to take charge of this project. Well, I mean, maybe you guys should not pay for the project and learn how to edit your videos. That would actually probably be a better solution. Wonder couldn't pay the editor fees, so he started editing for Sad Milk to not pay his fees. Okay. Wonder also did an edit. Let's say $300. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, here's the thing. You guys should have discussed all of this in the beginning. If you guys didn't have the money to do this channel and you were going to pay editors to do stuff, then you should have discussed it. If and maybe they did. If they did discuss it, then maybe this is on Wonder's Wonder for not having the money. Maybe Wonder's like, oh yeah, I can totally swing $60 every week or so. But then maybe they were putting out 6 videos a week, so that's the thing that was that's a little odd. So there's some missing information here on whether or not they actually discussed whether or not they were going to be actually paying editors for this. I really think Blair was trying to run this like a business, and the rest of them were trying to run this like a fun little side channel. And that's, I think, the biggest discrepancy between the two sides here.
What quickly transpired was that members either couldn't or wouldn't reimburse me for the editors.
I'd like to state that this quote is both chronologically and directly false, and it paints me as a rather greedy and avoidant person, which is not who I am.
It doesn't paint him as greedy. It paints him as being broke. Which is a whole different thing.
As I stated on my Twitlonger, which once more you can find in the description, in my span of Sad Milk, I edited roughly 3 to 5 Sad Milk videos. Sad Milk was a channel that lasted almost over a year. I was not an active editor, so to say I paid editors via my own edits is inaccurate. I did not become an editor to cover my share of the joint editing fees. During the time in which Sad Milk became a project, I was living paycheck to paycheck in my first apartment. I was barely 19 and food was pretty much an every other day.
Yeah, that's actually fair for a lot of people, especially a lot of YouTube content creators who are trying to do this full time. Okay, even big channel, moderately small channels, 5,000 subscribers, right? A lot of 5,000 subscriber channels make $50 a month. Now it depends on your niche. Reaction channels make one of the lowest points, so I make $32 a month. Now, to be fair, half of my stuff is copyright claimed, so there's that. But actual content channels like CB2, I think he probably makes closer to $500 or $600 a month. So, but yeah, no, I mean, Wonder was most likely right. He was probably living paycheck to paycheck. It sounded like he had another job. He wasn't just a content creator, so that's a bonus there.
Kind of deal. I'm sure anyone who has had an apartment or been young or on their feet working 2 jobs, you know this life.
Yep, multiple jobs. Look at that, Wonder. I applaud you. Multiple jobs. But yeah, no, I mean, rent is garbage in a lot of the country.
Know this story, it's been said and done a million times. And yet, I always paid my share. I put Sad Milk above my own health because I truly believed in the project. How I came to even edit a single Sad Milk video was when I was in a Discord call with the Sad Milk members, and while we were all chatting, having a good time, I, in my free time, edited a small little demo using all of our sprites.
Everyone, welcome to Sad Milk.
Download today. Oh, sorry.
No!
Welcome to Sad Milk.
Okay, so yeah, so that's how you kind of got the gig for that. That's pretty cool. But I mean, yeah, I mean, so it looks like Illuminati cherry picked the 1 to 4 times that I was gonna say Oz again, that Wonder edited over the course of a year, and then the rest of it he paid his $60, at least according to Wonder. Do we have 100% evidence of this? No. Did Illuminati show 100% evidence of this? No. So this is still he said, she said in a lot of ways. Okay. Sad Milk payments. Okay. So the red ones are probably have nothing to do with Sad Milk. I want to see something because I want to go back a second. Okay, so 115 sad milk, $69. Okay, so that's an actual payment. Go forward again. 3435. Okay, so it looks like January sad milk payment of 60 or so $60 plus whatever conversion fees potentially, depending on how PayPal works. So $70 towards sad milk editing, right? Most likely, whatever their agreement was for the channel. Then there was nothing that he paid in February, but he paid double in March. So it looks like he was a little late in February, or they just pushed it a little bit too late because February is a shorter month, and they just both paid. So 3-4 would be, the $60, and then maybe a little more. So maybe editing was a little bit more expensive that month. So it looks like that 3-4 covered both February and March most likely, or they were a little slower in March. It could be that too. And then hard to say what the extra $18 is for. So that's a couple of purchases over 3 months. Okay.
I was there.
So that's the thing, though. That's February through March, right? Or January through March, actually. But that's only 3 months. I mean, he's only showing us 3 months worth of statements. They said sad milk was a whole year. So, and he said he only did 5 edits. That's not the rest of the year. So this could still have missing information here. There could absolutely be months where he was, behind, where he wasn't paying. There's missing information here. And I'm not saying that he's wrong, but if you're going to show your receipts, you got to show all your receipts for the entire year. You have to go through all that stuff. And by the way, PayPal keeps receipts on your statements for a while. I think it's about 2 years. So, a little suspect, but okay. But he is making payments, obviously.
Then offered, hey, if you want to edit a video, we'd be happy to pay you. I was such a new creator and I was so new to contract work itself that I personally thought $20 was fair pay for my work.
Okay, that's fair. A lot of people do this. By the way, this video is going to ramble on for a long time because I have a lot of excess information in other aspects of life. I was an artist, digital artist for a long time before I ended up with nerve damage in my arm. Okay. I literally used to charge like $10 for a full color digital piece of art that took me 40 hours to draw. So I understand what he's saying.
After my initial payment that I asked for was Burger King because I just wanted dinner. Obviously, I was compensated more than that for that video. After about 3 months in, sad milk became profitable though.
Okay, wait a second. 3 months in or something, that lines up with payments. Okay, so maybe these payments were accurate in the fact that it only started costing them, money for the first 3 months. Then that would make a bit more sense, okay? And then they shouldn't actually be, then all the money should be coming from the channel itself and not from anyone else. Like let's say Blair started footing money forward for a slow month or whatever. Well, that's on Blair. she has to tell everyone, right? So if it was 3 months in and it wasn't a whole year, then it's a little bit different.
So while yes, Blair did pay for edits, she was always reimbursed for this. As you can see stated on the screen, you will find bank statement.
Okay, here we go. Okay, so we saw the first one. Well, these are the same two. These are the exact same 2 statements that we just saw.
I made directly to sad milk during its infancy. Okay, Blair's response to this and her closing thoughts on sad milk are quoted as the following.
To all of the members of Sad Milk, I just want to say that I'm very sorry that I caused you stress throughout this project.
I'd ask that you remember this quote as I believe, through my own biased lens, that this apology contradicts itself several times through.
Oh yeah, no, it totally contradicts itself all the time. That was... That was a very targeted response.
Throughout this video. But with that, we wrap up the mention of sad milk, and we now move on to the mention of me, Wonder.
I want to hear more about sad milk, but okay.
A very convenient series of videos resurfaced with him saying some not so...
Yeah, that garbage right there was... her digging into his past and pulling up videos. Now, it wasn't that they just resurfaced. It was the fact that she pulled them up from the past herself. That's a low blow. I mean, but I mean, I guess there's no real difference between that and a channel that does a whole essay and they go through and pull up all the worst things about some random person on the internet. Like a lot of people have done Logan Paul videos and they go back to his very first video and they're like, look what he did back then. So I don't see much of a difference between that. It's stupid and horrible, but it is the internet.
Those savory things after he left Sad Milk. I was actually unaware of those videos at the time of our friendship, but had I been aware of them, that friendship would have likely ended sooner.
Yeah, that's garbage. I don't believe that nonsense at all, because when these videos were being made... Whoops. Sorry. Captions. When those videos were being made, guess what? Illuminati was in Tommy C's channel saying the same stuff in places like Vegas and whatnot. So that is absolute garbage. I think the problem here is Illuminati thought she deleted all those videos and she didn't.
Surfaced, it wasn't really all that shocking to me, as Oz Media and I had actually talked about how Click had been using the R slur while we played games together.
Okay. Yeah. So this one is a little bit different. This is one of the few times I'll say Illuminati. This is in response, okay? So someone had told me that she was the R word, right? This is not her saying it, okay? She may have written it down, but that's not the same. That's someone telling her she's, okay? That's not her saying it outright, okay? That is dumb. This is not a place to use this part of the her saying that word. You can get her for saying it on Tommy C's channel and in the past, and a lot of people saying it, but the fact is she didn't write it down here. This is not how that one works. No.
Now, I feel the best way to do this would be to start with some quotes, and I'll shed light on my thoughts on said quotes.
A lot of it is fairly tricky since he hinges his accusations on anecdotal commentary. In responding to his baseless claims, I will provide evidence as necessary, as well as point out when things I mention are anecdotal.
After hearing this part of the video, I'd like to note a few things. Yes, my original tweet thread was very anecdotal aside from the photo of the living conditions,
That's
which,
true.
as I mentioned, we will touch base on later in the video. And as I stated before, I felt holding the cards in my hand, as well as not speaking on something that could very well encroach into legal matter territory, was in my best interest. I had been Blair's friend for years. I expected her to try to do something where she would try to twist the narratives. At least, in my experience, that is what I have seen in the past. So while
Okay, so these guys knew she liked to twist the narratives while they were friends with her, but she only twisted the narratives against them when they had the falling out. So they knew what she was doing against other creators potentially and didn't say anything. Okay, well, that's not exactly the best thing, and you can be like, well, you were afraid of her. That's not really an excuse. But okay.
yes, I was very word of mouth. However, it was not my intention to remain word of mouth. That is untrustworthy, and never in a million years would that back up any of the claims that I am here to bring forward. Moving on to the next section, I'd like to touch base on, we are going to go over her discussion of my employment. Now, I'd like to note that the discussion of employment will come back around as she...
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one, because I guess Wonder was claiming that he was getting paid less than his salary, but I think a lot of people, when they get their first salary job versus their first hourly job, is they don't understand salary. A $50,000 salary is not going to be your take home. A lot of people are like, well, I'm going to get $50,000 take home. That's great. Yeah, that's $50,000 before taxes. So once taxes are taken out, that's your actual take home. So 30 or 42,000 was probably more accurate.
He gets into another section surrounding legalities, which ties in towards the end of my employment.
Let's start with Wonder's accusation of wage theft. That's a big one, and it's important. During December 2020, like all of the members of Sad Milk, Wonder was considered a contractor. On December 24th, 2020, at 5:39 a.m., I received a message from Wonder letting me know that he took a shot at reworking a video that had already been edited by a different contractor.
Okay, so this is interesting, all right? he went out of his way to redo a video that that he thought needed extra work, right? Have you scheduled to go live? I did have your okay. Okay, so actually, I take that back. I was going to say that just because he took this part on doesn't mean he should get necessarily paid for it unless it was discussed in advance. But seeing the actual text thread here where Illuminati says, I have your edits scheduled to go live in 20 minutes and they're great, means he probably should be paid for it. Then yeah.
I want to clarify, I did not ask him to do this. This was something he did of his own accord. I don't want...
That's true. She didn't ask, but she did push the edits forward, which means she acknowledged the edits were needed. If she had said, no, it's fine as is, your edits are not worth it, then he shouldn't have been paid for it. But because she did push his edits forward, then he should be paid for it. Because obviously she thought it was better for a reason.
Want to claim to know what goes on in Wonder's personal life. Claiming that he missed Christmas with his brother and father, I just don't know how that's possible when the video was finalized early morning on Christmas Eve.
You claim...
Okay. I mean, okay.
You don't know what goes on in my personal life, but you go in depth about my living situation, my views on life, my depression, my car, my dog, and my mental health. I don't mean this in an antagonizing manner. Let's just call a spade a spade. As for missing Christmas, you raise a very good point, and without context, I can understand where your confusion would arise, so hopefully I can clear this up for you. I'd like to paint a picture here if you'd allow me to do so. December is one of the most important months as a creator. For those of you who don't know,
that is true. For a lot of creators, December is massive for when it comes to ad revenue. It's November and December are the two big months. July is another big month. It's why a lot of people take breaks in January and February. And they're like, well, I'm going to be gone for a bit. It's because ad revenue is basically garbage for the majority of creators during those 2 months.
No, there are better or worse months to post to YouTube due to when advertisers are most willing to pay. And most advertisers are wanting to put their highest performing ads on videos during the holiday months such as Christmas. This equals a higher CPM, which for those of you who...
Yep, because they're trying to get rid of as much money as possible and put it towards specific things before the new year starts. It's all about, tax season in this case. So yeah, no, he's 100% accurate when it comes to this.
Are in the creator space, it will all just kind of water down to this. Higher paying ads plus more videos equals more push equals more money in your pocket. It's a lot of boring stuff. Puts food on the table, pays your bills. That's all you need to know. At this time, I was a full creator. I didn't make crazy amounts of money, but I made enough to live on my own terms. During December, I was churning out content from my own channel. I needed it as a small growing channel and as someone who needed to pay his bills. However, our editors were short in the month of December, so what Blair fails to mention in her video, I will clarify. December 21st, I just completed a sad milk video that took me 16 hours give or take to make. I had pulled an all-night.
Yep, a lot of creators, it takes a lot of time to edit videos. And that's where a lot of people get really mad at like channels like reaction channels like ours. I don't edit my videos, which for better or for worse is what it is. So, I put a little intro thing on the front of it and then just, encode it effectively and it goes out. But then again, my channel makes, when I do put a video out that actually ends up being monetized, my CPM is about 20 cents per 1,000 views. Whereas these guys were at least hopefully pulling in, $11 per 1,000 views.
To do so, as we had discussed trying to have a stronger pull for the holiday months. A few days prior, I had just pulled yet another all-nighter to get a video out for the 19th on my own personal channel.
Right, which is great. Good job, Wonder. Ooh, and he got 26,000 views. That would be awesome. I don't deserve that, though.
We had an editor who had been tasked to complete a sad milk vlog that was intended to go up December 24th. Blair had hired this editor. She never once, as far as my knowledge, checked in on this editor to see his progress with said video.
Okay, so that's obviously all on Blair. She hired them, and she was responsible for it.
Where I grew worried is that as far as I knew, I had never seen this editor do any work for sad milk, and we were really coming up on the deadline of the 24th. On December 23rd, after starting another project and working through the entire day, putting a dent into my own personal edit, I got into bed only to find that Oz had received the video from the editor. I took a look at the
let's see here. I think 10 minutes with a change music session. I'm not sure how I would word it without seeming rude. Okay, so they were talking about how they didn't really they liked the video, but they didn't really like the edits. Okay. So Wonder is like, well, I think it could be better if we edited it a different way, right?
Video, asked an unbiased source their opinion, and we all agreed that the video had major issues for a supposed finished product.
I mean, it doesn't say major issues. It just says interesting idea type stuff. But okay, all right, we'll say that.
These issues included scuffed audio, poor audio leveling, unnecessary edits that made relatively no relation to the edit itself, followed by long periods of dead air for an increased watch time push. I do not mean this as
Yeah, I've seen a lot of creators do that.
an insult. Resembled a home movie gone bad rather than a fleshed out project for a channel that had almost 200,000 subscribers. I knew this was a severe problem.
Okay, so they were definitely a really decent channel by this point, so they were definitely making money.
For two reasons. First, the deadline for the upload was the following morning. Second, this video was expensive and intended since November to be a Christmas Eve video. The video in reference was a Sad Milk gingerbread house building competition where we all flew out to Colorado. Blair purchased a large amount of items for said video, such as microphones, gingerbread houses, and Santa hats, all that material you need to make a gingerbread house. I'd like to add that Blair intended to use these expenses as a tax write-off, so it wasn't a total loss. We were all contracted for an entertainment.
That's a minor thing. I mean, tax write-off is not the same as still losing the money on those items. It's not like you get all that money back. Just okay.
Company. In order for this to be a tax write-off, we would need to produce a video to prove as such. So now we have to think of the perception of Sad Milk, a project that represented all of our names. This puts us in a
Okay, but as for tax write, so did Blair pay for all these tickets for them to come out there? Maybe that would be where she could write off make a tax write-off for that. But even then, it's not that big of a deal. That's what, maybe maximum $3,000, maybe $4,000. That's not a massive tax write-off for any company.
Position with very limited options. We either let down the audience and post a very scuffed video that would exhibit a lack of care for the content we were making, which was not ideal given we had just lost half our members. We delay the video, which ties in with the first issue as our Christmas Eve video, which would either get out the 26th or the 27th at the earliest due to our available editors. Or we scrap the video, which leaves Blair out of money regardless, but now we have also wasted an entire trip visiting another state, and there are a bunch of expenses that can't qualify as a tax write-off. So I got out of bed after work.
Yeah, I don't know. That's not an excuse for you to go out of your way to do that. You guys should just release the video as is, and it probably would have been fine. That's not... Okay, so this right here is on Wonder, all right? I can't blame Blair for this just because she hired an editor that Wonder didn't like, okay? This right here yeah, maybe it did come out better, all right? Maybe it did. But the reality is we don't know. 2, he doesn't know. And it's not really an excuse to push, yourself forward to do this and then be like, well, I still deserve to be paid for this because I did all these edits that I think that Blair screwed up. But maybe Blair didn't think the video was screwed up originally. Maybe she was fine with it. I mean, just because you weren't fine with it doesn't necessarily mean that everything is 100%, well, I'm just going to do this and make it, better in my eyes, maybe better in Oz's eyes. But, that's the thing. I'm missing a little bit of sympathy on this part because that doesn't make any sense as to why you would put yourself through this for. And by the way, this would be effectively a volunteer position. This is not one that you potentially should have gotten paid for. You should have probably just written this off as your gift to the group.
Working all day
because you did it without telling anyone.
Shot at reworking a video in a style I was not familiar with. I was
telling Oz though was that changes would be better does not mean you're going to automatically do it. So
up roughly until 5 a.m. working on that video, and I waited to make sure it was good to upload and that we had the okay. I did this to avoid those negative outcomes I just listed. My sleep schedule.
But the problem with those negative outcomes is they're just possible negative outcomes, and half of it only affected Blair, so that's irrelevant.
Was beyond screwed, so by the time I went to bed later that night, I slept due to pure exhaustion until well into the early afternoon of Christmas Day. To add,
I mean, but that's the problem here. That's still a personal choice that Wonder did. This is not something you can use as an excuse for missing Christmas. This is a personal choice that Wonder chose to do, and this was all on him. He can't just blame Blair for this just because the editor wasn't up to his standards. That's not how this works.
Add to this, my family does not see each other very often.
I disagree
so
on
for us
this
to be in one
whole
room
part.
is a very rare thing. I had not seen my brother in almost a year, and I know Christmas is important to my father. Since we can't all spend
A year? Man, you guys meet so much more often. My parents live 20 minutes
an
from me.
entire day together as we all have our own various lives, we plan to spend the morning of Christmas together. Obviously, it did not pan out that way. I'd like to add that no, Blair did not directly ask me to make this rework. However, Blair had made it clear in the last few months, especially when ft.Oz left, that she felt she had no help with the channel.
That's still not an excuse for you to basically blame her for your Christmas mistake. I mean, look, I get it, but it's not an actionable thing here.
That she felt the responsibility fell onto her. This was me helping her. Not just her, but a project I
It's okay.
dearly
Fine.
cared about. I'd like to now focus on my pay. I said I was not paid until half a month after. This, I will admit, was anecdotal mostly. Blair said I was paid on a bi-weekly Sad Milk basis. At this time, Sad Milk was making money, just not a whole lot of it after editorial expenses. So typically I could see a check for $80 to $140 every month. As for editing, I had negotiated $500 per edit as Oz helped me realize my worth as an editor.
Right, but maybe the channel didn't have $500 at that moment because Christmas stuff when you're getting paid through YouTube tends to show up a little bit later because they're waiting for the end of the year to go through. So they still generally he shouldn't have been paid till at least the 21st of January for an edit. Just because of how YouTube tends to work. Usually it goes up through like the 18th. That's where the pay period tends to end for YouTube. And then you get paid between the 21st and the 26th of the next month. So the fact that he was getting paid bi-weekly means he was getting paid in advance earlier. And this was a special edit. It should have been completely separate from his regular pay.
And as for compensation for me not being a full-time editor, I'd like to add that in part of what I agreed for edits, I would do additional sprite movement, motion, and scene creation. This was painstaking to do, but this was also a quality result I would bring to the table of this channel while also working on my own channel. The editor we hired to the vlog, to my knowledge, was to be paid $200 for their edit. However, since I reworked the video last minute, I was to be compensated with $100, which I believe was fair pay. So I'd like for us to view the following bank statements.
But yeah, he should have been compensated for that, but at a later date, not included on his normal pay. It should have been a separate payment, not just automatically added to his new one, because most of the time it's based, the revenue that you base your income off of is going to be based off of what was the month before. And since YouTube generally ends their pay period on the 18th of every month, it's not always the 18th. It's usually around the 18th of every month. This was after the this was the 24th, which means it wouldn't have started until January 18th, which means he should have been paid this extra $100 after January 18th, between January 21st and the 25th on his next pay period. That's what's okay.
Two in particular, one on January 29th.
Okay, see, this is where he should have gotten the extra $100. So he should have been given the extra $100 here. But it also should have showed up as a separate payment because it was a special edit.
2021 for $125, and another on February 29th, 2021.
See, this is after the 18th here, but I'm surprised that so I'm not sure how their payments were structured on Blair's side. I don't know why they were doing bi-weekly. I mean, sure, why not? But they should have just stuck with the monthly payments for how YouTube works in general. That would have made things so much easier.
For $600. Now, I tried to dig deeper, but this just says a transaction from a bank occurred. I'd like to state that at first, I believed I was receiving Sad Milk payments via PayPal, so I tried to find an old email. Since I was making a fair amount of money, I would usually just let money stack into my PayPal and I would take it all out at once. And you can see right here that this is what a statement like that would look like.
Yeah, but you should have a PayPal transfer when it comes in. Like if you go to PayPal, it should tell you where it came from. It doesn't just say nowhere. So he should have had access to that. Now, all he would need to do was message Illuminati and be like, hey, that extra $100 for the edit, was that included on something or not? That's all he would need
in
to
my
do.
bank account. At this time, I worked full-time, so my only income was from...
Example of what his account would look like. Okay. Oh, okay. So this is through Chase. This isn't his PayPal account. Okay. Okay. So this doesn't really help us because let's say he has money stacking up in PayPal, right? And then he transfers it in. That doesn't help us at all with any of this. Good job on the Google AdSense down there on 121. That's probably from his actual channel. I'm gonna say that this doesn't really help us. We would need to see the PayPal transaction.
Google AdSense, Twitch, and SadMilk. While it has been a long time, if I remember correctly, these payments would numerically and chronologically line up with SadMilk and editor payments. It is the only possible source of this income that makes sense, which then shows me for the
why don't you just check your PayPal account? Because PayPal, you log into PayPal and it tells you how much you got. Because if you're being paid via PayPal, that's where you're getting your payments. So what about that $100 on 104 ATM check deposit? Could that have been like a digital check? Where did that extra $100 come from? I guess that could have been a Christmas present. That was probably a Christmas present. So yeah, I mean, laying it stack up, showing us your Chase account doesn't help. We need to see the PayPal account, which is what's missing here. There's something missing here.
Month of January, I actually only received one SadMilk payment, if that's the case. And it also distinctly shows that I was in fact paid separately as both SadMilk talent.
Okay, so let's see here. We're gonna go back a second. Can I go back? Did I go too far? Did I go too many frames back? Yeah. Problem with this is this video is so long. I can't just easily go back. Okay, here we go. So that's 2018, so never mind. That doesn't help. I thought there was a $100 one. Okay, shoot. So assuming this is 2021, and these are both SadMilk deposits, is the $100 within the $600 one? I'm going to say that it should have been separate regardless, and there's a good chance that Illuminati forgot.
And it also distinctly shows that I was in fact paid separately as both SadMilk talent and an editorial talent. I'd like to note that the...
Okay. So yeah, $500 for that video, sure. And then $100 for that one. Okay, so that's where, okay,
These
fine.
payments are over the course of 1 to 2 months, not a month and a half.
Okay. 1 to 2 months is a month and a half. What?
At the beginning of January, you can see I was paid $100 from this income source. That would make sense given half of the $200 video would, yes, be $100. However, if you look at the month of December, I did not receive one payment from SadMilk. So I would assume unless SadMilk just did very poorly that month and we made absolutely zero income, as I did not...
You shouldn't be making... Gosh dang it. Their payment structure makes no sense. You should be paid for your month of December in January. That's how it works.
Not manage these channels' finances, this payment would be the SadMilk payment for
that would make sense.
December.
And okay, so then that wasn't a I thought that was like a check for like Christmas or something. So obviously that was probably that extra $100 right there, right?
For fixing the video. Why was I clearly paid the $600 here followed by the prior regular SadMilk?
Then it sounds like you may have gotten an extra $100. So maybe Oz paid you that $100 and Illuminati added $100 onto the other thing. So maybe you accidentally got extra.
Bank statement, 500 being for the original video I did and 100 being for the video I corrected.
It sounds like you got an extra $100 by accident.
I had someone else take a look at the calendar, and if these payments were bi-weekly and I had a pay period beginning on the 1st, my pay period should have seen payments starting from the 1st, followed by the 15th, the 29th, which is correct.
There's no way they were actually bi-weekly. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense with how YouTube works as a payment structure. So, and SadMilk, from what I understand, wasn't an actual company. It was a lot of it was running through Blair's LLC, but I don't think Blair had a standard. The way she set it up, she likely was using it just for protection against being sued. It wasn't likely used for an actual payment processing type thing, because you wouldn't be getting payments from PayPal in a bi-weekly setting. You'd be getting payments from a payment company generally. I guess you could be running it through QuickBooks or something, but still it would be set up a little bit differently.
Correct, but we were missing a pay period, the 12th, then the 26th, but I was paid on the 19th. You can argue that Sad Milk was performing bad financially, which resulted in delayed or no payments by this time, as we had not uploaded since December, and views did in fact dwindle. But that begs the question, if the payment of $600 is an editor payment, which I'd argue is because Sad Milk itself and its contractors never saw an amount that large in its history, why am I being paid for it not half a month late, but almost 2 months late?
Okay, then maybe it was just a combined total of a couple of payments. I don't know if there was an actual did Oz sign a contract for bi-weekly payment or a bi-monthly payments, because that's saying that you hope you can get bi-monthly payments would be great, but I don't. There's something missing here, and I think Sad Milk was just not as well designed as people think.
Late. My only other theory is that these payments were in a source such as PayPal, where I could allow the funds to store up, then deposit.
Then why don't you log into PayPal and look for those payments?
However, it would still be delayed and show I was paid separately as an editor and contracted talent for Sad Milk.
Do you not have access to your PayPal account? I'm so confused. How are you getting these payments if you don't have access to your PayPal account? Is this like a joint PayPal account that for whatever reason you don't have access to, and she was able to make deposits into your account via like a debit card on the account? Because the only thing that's making sense here is you don't have access to your own PayPal account, or aren't willing to show us your PayPal account.
During this time, he would often tell both Oz Media and myself how living in Austin, Texas was a nightmare for him. He would often complain about his roommates being terrible people, his friends being mostly terrible people and unmotivated to do well in life, and how his car was always breaking down, and how his channel was not going in the direction
Okay, so normal bullshitting with friends. Okay.
he wanted. And then he talked about that last bit of family that he had moving away, and he was essentially alone. I won't speak on behalf of Oz, but I know I was moved by Wonder's stories.
Oh yeah, I call a little bullshit on that one, Illuminati.
So I'd like to clarify here. Yes, I didn't like living where I lived. I live, as Blair stated, in Austin, Texas, and I don't mean to be humorous here, given
Yeah, it's hot there. There's a lot of I got family around there. There's a lot of stuff, and it's also very expensive in Austin.
the severity of this video. But it's like, man, the people who live here hate living here. It's just like a thing. Like, I'm gonna...
Okay, to be fair, a lot of people hate living wherever they've grown up. That's why they tend to move around.
maybe go get some groceries today. You gotta wait like 5 hours in line behind rows and rows of traffic. You want to go to
That's like where I live.
the park, you gotta drop like $15 just to touch grass because you gotta pay for parking. It's like a meme here that if you see a cardboard box, like any person who's from here will point it and be like, oh yeah, that looks like it would go for $2,300. There's
Only $2,300? Man, he's so lucky. Where I live, a studio apartment is $2,800.
many great things about this place, but it's for a very niche particular crowd of people, which I do not fall in line with that. As for my roommates, I only had one roommate, and he's one of my best friends who I would do literally anything for.
Now, why the heck were you complaining about him online?
Have I gotten annoyed with him? Yes.
Oh,
Who hasn't been annoyed with any friend in their life? I'm sure I've done plenty of things to
No, it's easy. Just don't have friends.
piss him off. Is he a terrible person? Never in a million years, so I don't know why this is even really being brought up. I think the times where I got most annoyed was where there were 2 incidences where I accidentally got locked out of the house, and he sleeps like you could probably fire a ballistic missile next to this man and he would sleep through it.
Yeah, I've slept through tornadoes. Apparently, when I was in a trailer park once, I slept through gunshots from a crazy guy in a nearby hotel randomly shooting at trailers. So yeah, no, I totally get that one.
So I ended up having to sleep in my car twice, and there was dishes out and stuff we've all made the same mistake of in the past, okay? He's not a terrible person, and neither are my friends. And no, I wouldn't say that my friends are unmotivated in life. I would say that during this time, I was really
Yeah, there's a pretty good chance that Illuminati embellished a lot of stuff right here.
Really wanting to move forward with content and really get into creating full time, which I was already doing, but I wanted to take it a step further. I wanted this to be my life. And my friends, obviously, because everyone has different goals and dreams, did not share this sentiment. It wasn't that they were unmotivated, it's that I just was losing that connection of, hey, y'all don't really get what I'm doing, I don't really get what you're doing, and it sucks, but that's just how friends are, you know? You're not
Friendships change, friendships move on. It's all normal.
Not gonna relate forever with every single thing you and your friends do. As for my car was not breaking down constantly. I had a 2011 sedan. The only thing I didn't like about it was that somebody rear-ended the back and it looked like it was dented in. It looked like someone took a massive fist to the back of the car. I have never...
So here's what he should have done when he moved to Texas. Kept that car and just asked to help replace the bumper so it looked less stupid and not get another car. That's what he should have done.
Had one maintenance issue on that car. In fact, my brother still owns the car to this day. My channel was actually going in a really good direction. At this time, I was starting to pull a lot of steady views, but the narrative behind the closed doors and sad milk was that we should all be moving away towards Reddit content and getting into video essay type content.
Yeah, but that's what Blair really wanted to do, but it didn't sound like anyone else wanted to do it. You know, I mean, even Click's channel, even now, still does meme content the whole time, and so did a lot of these guys. So, and it looks like they didn't want to do that, but she really wanted to, and she was kind of forcing the narrative on that one.
Like Blair. It was a very known thing behind closed doors where we would insult and belittle anyone who still did Reddit, while Oz and I actually were still doing Reddit.
Well, I mean, who cares? Do people really care? I mean, I bash a lot of reaction channels and I do the same stuff.
So it developed into a resentment towards my own content, which my audience liked, but I now was finding that I despised what I did.
Without going into personal details, I was pretty horrified by what he had explained happened in his past. I was
I don't know. I think Blair likes to embellish a lot, really.
saddened by how he constantly talked about how bad his life was and how he felt like a failure. He said he felt alone, depressed, and uncertain of the future. And at that point, I knew I wanted to help him in whatever way I could.
I feel this is...
Yeah, okay, you help them by giving them a gift card to something, all right? You don't be like, oh, come move into my house.
very contradictory to say without going into personal details than to turn around and spread personal details about...
Blair seems to have like a savior complex, but it only works if she's in control of the whole complex at the or not the complex, the whole narrative at the whole time, all the time, so she can prove that it was only her that helped out. That seems to be the biggest problem here.
My views towards life. Again, these were very private things I kept between you. Yes, I suffer from depression. A lot of people do, and oftentimes that can skew your view towards life itself. The only time I ever really felt like a failure was when I constantly was compared via Social Blade, etc., and told how much better I could be doing if I did X.
All right, something that a lot of people need to realize, and this is very important to a lot of new creators. So if any new creators or if someone's on my channel and they're like sitting here and they're like, you do a terrible job, Jeff. All right, you are awful. I can do better. I'm going to create my own channel and do better, okay? All right, you need to know something about Social Blade. Social Blade lies. Everything about Social Blade is a lie, for the most part. It only can guess roughly what your income is going to be and your views and everything based off of if everything goes 100% perfectly. If you go to my channel right now on Social Blade, it's going to tell you I make something like $1,000 to $2,000 a year. That's a lie. I make 1/10 or 1/20th of what it says because almost all of my videos end up being copyright claimed, which is fine. But the reality is, even if it's an essay channel, that's not how it works. It assumes that everyone is watching a video 100% of the way through, either has YouTube Premium, or watches every single ad without skipping it or not using ad block. So Social Blade is completely worthless from a revenue standpoint. It's somewhat useful from a view standpoint and a potential guesstimate on views, and maybe a little bit useful on a subscriber standpoint, but everything else about that company and that website is complete trash. And people need to realize that, because a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, look at Social Blade. This person makes $100,000 a month. No, they don't make $100,000 a month on ad revenue. They might make $15,000 a month, which is still good, but there's no way anyone makes even close to that amount in ad revenue, except maybe Mr. Beast.
XYZ. It made me feel like I was underachieving as a small channel.
At the end of 2020, I paid for his tickets to visit Oz, and
Yeah, I should never have paid attention to Social Blade. That really does do a number on a lot of creators early on, and I totally get that, because I see people all the time in the new YouTuber Reddit threads and the partnered threads always comparing their stuff to Social Blade, and it makes no sense.
me in Colorado. During this trip, we discussed the possibility of Wonder moving out to Colorado due to his discontent with his life in Texas.
Sure, and maybe he could have moved out to. Okay, so this is even better. So the trip was not to okay, so it was just for the Christmas video. Okay, fine. And they were talking about him moving out to Colorado. Yeah, sure, why not? But he should never have moved in with them. And at this time, it looked like It looked like Wonder actually had money in the bank. It looked like he had $8,000 in the bank at this point, because that's still something you can see there. He didn't have nothing. He had enough to go rent an apartment in Colorado. Where they were in Colorado, you could have probably rented a decent apartment for around $1,200 to $1,500. All right, you could have gone a little cheaper and rented a room for $800 to $900 probably. They were not in like the world's most amazing spots, and Blair creating company homes only works if she already has them built. Okay, you don't listen to someone who's like, I'm gonna build a home for a member. Don't listen to that. That's just naive. And yeah, I mean, Wonder was young, but he still had $8,000 in the bank, so it wasn't like he was completely broke moving there. Okay. So this is just the traveling stuff. Now, the question for this one is, I think Blair paid for these, right? These tickets? Which doesn't necessarily matter. Yeah, so this is just stuff, I think, showing that stuff that Blair potentially paid for. Okay, so ticket, sure. She probably got, okay, so November, yeah, no, it was off season still, most likely. So she probably got paid, or she probably got a decent deal on some of those tickets, so it probably wasn't that expensive from Texas to Colorado and back, $400 in coach or maybe less. So she probably didn't pay as much as people seem to think. And then this stuff right here is like $50. Let's see here. Okay, so this is her stupid company little home plan, which is hilarious because was apparently a super lefty at this point and on the leftist mafia, and they hate landlords, but that's beside the point.
Oz Media and I had just moved into his newly purchased home in April 2021, and he decided to welcome Wonder into his house.
Okay. So here's the thing that with Wonder. All right, this has nothing to do with Blair, right? They may think it has a lot to do with Blair, but this is Oz saying Wonder can live there. Blair shouldn't be able to kick Wonder out, because at this point in 2021, this is 100% Oz's house. Now, Oz obviously had a decent chunk of change because he qualified for a loan on a house by himself, and I don't remember anyone saying that this was a joint venture between the two of them. So it only sounds like Blair was living in the house for free while they were dating, and she might have been contributing towards like internet and utilities and stuff, but I don't think she was putting any money towards the mortgage. And here's where Oz should have been charging her rent. That's what he should have been doing. And I don't think he was doing this because they were dating, but he really should have been charging her rent, because either she convinced him to buy a house he could never afford, or more likely, he thought he could afford this house. And she's like, oh yeah, you can probably afford this house. And what more likely happened is he doesn't understand how a mortgage works. So, he put his 20% down. Great. So that was probably the majority of his savings. And he's like, oh, cool. Now my mortgage is only going to be, like $1,500 a month. But with houses, that's not how it works. He most likely didn't understand, and there's a good chance Blair also didn't understand, because she may not have had a house at this point either. She may have been a renter up until this point. And if she never had any other houses and she was always a renter, a lot of people don't understand right off the bat that buying a house is not just your mortgage. It's your mortgage, it's your insurance, it's the upkeep for a lot of stuff, it's fixing a lot of stuff that's required right when you purchase the house, and there's a lot of ongoing maintenance to it. And then there's also the taxes that you owe every year on top of your mortgage, which a lot of people don't realize. So a $1,500 mortgage could easily go up to $2,400 with all the other expenses. And in his case, it would be like fire insurance because he's like out in Colorado, right? So, but as it is right now, Oz invited Wonder to live there, all right? And he also did it for free, which he shouldn't have done. Now, this was supposed to be temporary because Illuminati was supposedly going to be buying all these other houses, which, by the way, never went through. Keep that in mind. None of this ever went through, which means none of it was actually ever ready. She was only discussing it with Oz, most likely, because when she said the house wasn't ready, she likely hadn't purchased the house yet. And that's the thing here. That's some of the missing information here. So he should have moved in with Oz temporarily, and then when he realized that the house wasn't going to be ready, he should have started looking right away for an apartment. Because if Wonder moved to Colorado, he should have still, because it doesn't look like he hired a moving company. All right, when you hire a moving company, they'll easily cost you $10,000. But it doesn't sound like he hired a moving company. It sounds like he just drove there, or maybe shipped a pod there, like one of the small ones, which would cost about $2,000. So it probably cost him less than $2,000 to move to Colorado, which means he should have still had $6,000 to $10,000 in his checking account based off of his bank statements. So he should have had enough money to go rent an apartment, but he didn't for some reason.
Unless Oz Media was doing so without my understanding, Wonder was not charged any rent, utilities, or internet.
Okay, but that's nothing to do with Blair. None of this is to do with Blair. None of the rent and anything has anything to do with Blair. This is all a deal with Oz. Who cares?
For sharing our living space.
Yes, we had actually discussed a payment plan for rent. What Blair leaves out, and what I find very perplexing as to why she left out in her video, is that the reason I didn't pay rent was because I was going to become Blair's tenant. Not once does she mention throughout this video that when I first had the discussion of moving to Colorado, it was because Blair wanted to get her hands into the real estate market and wanted to build a home.
Right, but none of that ever happened, so this is all just random fluff. So Oz never, or not Oz, from this point forward, the only one responsible for the house was Oz. Oz should have been charging at least $200 in rent to both of them. That would have helped offset a massive chunk of the issue that Oz ended up facing in the long run. But for some reason, he didn't, because he was trying to... Oz is likely a people pleaser, and that's probably the biggest problem. He probably is a people pleaser, and that's probably what happened here, which wasn't really as fleshed out in the other videos, and that may be contributing to a lot of the issues that Oz is having with money.
Something she
you
had
can't
discussed
just do
with
everything
other
away for
former
free.
Sad Milk members. It wasn't just me. I made a reasonable
Okay, so the cul-de-sac is out, so obviously the whole thing fell through. Obviously, she wasn't able to do it. She realized it was too expensive. It didn't make sense.
first tenant. I was someone she knew, and I obviously made income, so kind of put two and two together. You can say this is a good deed on the surface, and it most certainly appears that way. I'll get into how over time Blair would have controlled every aspect of my life, be it transportation, income, and housing. I sincerely do not understand why the conception of this home was never presented in the video. It leaves out a massive gap of context.
Yeah, okay, but the question is, was the home ever done or built? Because just if you put a plan together, yeah, and I understand Oz put money towards this plan, the home was never built. So this never came to fruition, so none of this technically matters. If as soon as Oz realized, or not Oz, as soon as Wonder realized this wasn't going to be a thing, he should have just started looking for an apartment.
Context. The home I was told would be finished by August and that I could stay the summer. And the last month before moving to Colorado, after finalizing my lease, I was informed that the home would be pushed back until December.
Okay, and this is where you drop out of the lease. And this is what, because at this point, you're not locked into this lease if there's no home. That's not how that works. All right, you would just drop out of the lease and then go rent an apartment. She couldn't then sue you for, not paying rent or whatever for this home because it didn't exist. She would be breaking her own contract in this case. So no, that's not how this works. At that point, he knew a month in advance that this wasn't going to go through. So unless he's talking about his the ending of his lease in Texas, which is more likely, he had a whole month to start looking around for another place, either in Texas or in Colorado, and that's what he should have done.
December. It's made me highly uncomfortable, which you can see the dates in
I said I was cool with it, but if I'm being real, I'm somewhat, yeah, sorry, fair enough. Yeah, he doesn't want to stay in their house till December. At the very least, he should have offered to pay rent, right? Because that way at least gives him better tenant rights. He can't just be kicked out.
these private DMs between Oz and a friend of mine who will remain anonymous. I have always been a very independent person. I have never had someone else pay my rent once in my life, and I have been living on my own since I was 18. To try to paint me as a freeloader when you also leave out that I was originally...
Yeah, I don't know what Illuminati's problem was with that, because it doesn't matter. She was also potentially a freeloader in that house.
only supposed to stay until August. You were supposed to be my landlord, and that I only stayed 30 days in Colorado feels like a contorted attack on who I am as a person.
Okay, so he stayed with them for 30 days, right? If anything, he owed Oz rent, but Oz didn't want him to pay rent, so this is not Wonder's fault. He was basically just visiting as a guest for 30 days. That's it. That has nothing to do with anything. There's no way Oz or Wonder can be considered a freeloader here because Oz refused to take rent from him, so or any sort of payment from him. So this is not on Wonder. Wonder is not a freeloader. If he wanted to stay in Colorado, he should have just got an apartment, and he probably would have, but he left first.
While I was in their home, if I didn't know how to help, I would oftentimes clean their home. I wanted to help Blair with her recording space as she felt stressed in her little office. I wanted to buy us plants to liven the place up. I tried at every possible turn to earn my keep. And when I felt alienated, I tried to actively find an apartment in Colorado Springs to give them both the space as I...
Okay, so he was actively trying to find an apartment. What the heck is wrong with Blair? That makes no sense. No. Okay, this comment down here is stupid, okay? He wasn't taking advantage of them. They literally, okay, ignoring Blair for the moment, Oz literally told him, you can come in and live with me for free. This is all on Oz, not on Wonder, and he wasn't taking advantage of them because this was all set up in advance, and he tried. And he should have gone out, and he was looking for apartments, which is great. Just because he felt like he was taking advantage of them is not the same. That's completely ludicrous.
I felt horrible, seemingly never being able to help in any way at all. It was beyond unfair. I made every effort to not be a burden, as it is quite frankly one of my biggest fears in my
Okay, here's the other thing. Wonder still had money, by the way, at this point. He wasn't just broke here, by the way. I don't know what money he was spending, because based off of his last incomes, unless he should have been between $7,000 and $10,000 even during the move, and he was probably still making $1,500 a month or so with AdSense just from his main channel, not including the sad milk stuff. So it's not like he had no income, and even if it was a slow month during January, February, March, etc., he'd still be making $700 to $800 just in residual income. So he was still making money, and not having to pay rent is a huge deal.
entire life.
I'm Oz. Y'all know me as Oz Media.
Now, during the month of June, I stayed with you, Oz, and Blair. During this time...
Okay, so this is June of probably 2021. So there is a big gap on what we know about Wonder's income in this point. So there is a chance that Wonder does have a lot less because he spent a ton of money on some dumb things. But it just doesn't sound like it, because it looked like his accounts were going up, and it looks like he was relatively stable.
Did Blair provide work to me as an editor? If this wasn't a case, did you ever witness me personally trying to assist Blair in anything else?
Yeah, I mean, you weren't provided work for like a majority of the time that you were actually employed. I think we were also working.
Oh, right. The whole point of him moving there was because Blair decided to employ him. That's still on Blair. This is all on Blair for not giving him work.
On Thinkology at the time, but nothing really came out of that besides a couple recordings, and you ended up not really wanting to pursue that. So there wasn't any work that she had actually given you part of the company. You were kind of just literally being paid to stand around. I might be wrong on this, but you actively did try to assist her with her the candle shop that she was just starting.
How many businesses does this person have?
Starting up, and I mean, she didn't like that, but you were actively trying to seek out and find work. So
Okay, so he was a bit annoyed when it came to the candle shop, but that's fair.
It's not like you were just like freeloading off of it. You, from my memory, you were trying to actually earn your keep.
Blair
So here's the thing, though. The only thing with this one is, yeah, he was trying to do a bunch of extra work, but she only hired him to be an editor, and I know his system crashed or whatever. But why would he fly back to? Okay, I want
proceeds to go on an explanation as to how well her channel was doing and that she felt grateful to be in a position to help someone she cared deeply about. On June 7th, 2021, I was hired by Blair starting at $50,000 a year, as she stated, which was
which is like $42,000 a year, maybe a little higher after taxes. Okay.
a number that seemed rather life-changing to me. At face value, I'm sure anyone who saw this viewed me as someone who had to cut a few clips together and everything was happily ever after. That is what I personally expected. However, I will explain that this was not the case regarding my employment, as I was soon to find out.
During his employment, he never took advantage of any of the benefits that were made available to him.
Okay, most people don't take advantage of benefits for any job, especially salaried position, until at least 3 months into the job, because most of the time they don't even work.
The reason I did not use any of these benefits was because I was employed for roughly 60 days. I had just moved to another state. I barely even knew the roads and where to even go to eat. I wasn't focused on doctor visits, the dentist, and unless I turn 85 years old, I can't really use my 401k. The only thing that I can think of was the groceries that the LSA covers, but as I say,
I mean, that's a cool little bonus for groceries, but that's like, yeah, all the other ones are fluff stuff until one, you either break your leg, or, you know, 6 months minimum for most people.
Before, I'm a rather independent person, so I didn't need Blair to particularly buy me groceries. I also find it unnecessary that she goes out of her way to explain the volunteer reimbursement program she has. If I didn't
A volunteer reimbursement. Why would you volunteer for the first year? Most people want to know if they're going to keep their job for the first year before even touching any sort of volunteer stuff.
Use any of the benefits, why is it necessary to go into detail about them? Was I expected to, in the middle of moving to a new state for the first time since I was 7, volunteer at a soup kitchen to pass the time?
No, that's stupid. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
The content for Wonder to edit was dependent on me being able to live stream. During this time, I unfortunately only had 2 streams for him to work on, which Wonder would have been able to produce about 4 videos from. Wonder did not meet the deadlines for either.
Did you create job points for these? Like, for instance, so this is where it's going to become he said, she said stuff for the most part, because there's no written documentation for this, right?
Despite this, I kept him on payroll. I continued his pay, even though no work had ever been completed. Although there was only a minuscule amount of work for Wonder to do, he still managed to act up within company spaces. He made inappropriate comments on forms that were visible to other employees, didn't complete tasks that were assigned to him, and he failed to follow company protocol. I have a strict policy regarding formal disciplines, and within his
I want to know, though, I really want to know this, Blair. Did you actually, when you hired him, did you actually go through an actual onboarding process with your employee, or did you treat this like a friend? Because if you treated this like a friend and didn't have any sort of company handbook or any of this stuff, and just had it in a document somewhere, and you just kind of put it into his employment contract and didn't say anything about it, then this is mostly on you.
short time of working with me, he had already met the criteria for termination.
After hearing this, I'd assume you'd attribute me as someone with a very poor work ethic, and I honestly would not blame you. However, while Blair is being very anecdotal here, I'd like to provide—
They're both being anecdotal, unless there's actual, like, proof.
I had receipts that prove the following. Proof that I was not kept on payroll and I was fired before my deadline even happened. These were not short clips. The comment that I made on a forum that was grounds for termination, Blair leaving out how long it took her to actually provide content to edit, Blair leaving out that I had—
I want to see the grounds for termination, because most of the time you usually get at least one warning. There's no automatic termination in most cases.
Asked for work and various other aspects, my deadline extension due to my computer editing software corrupting, not me being lazy, me flying to another state to meet said deadlines with plane tickets provided, and again, proof that—
NDA close, okay. Why Why would she mail it to Austin? I guess maybe he was in Austin at this point.
That I was fired before my...
Okay, so you have until August 2nd, so don't rush the project. We planned out... So here's my question is, the person in red, that's obviously not Blair, right? So maybe Blair had already fired Wonder, and this person didn't know. Because that's the only thing that makes sense. So there's a good chance that Blair had already terminated Wonder and had and just hadn't told everyone on staff, which wouldn't mean that he actually was on time with his video, because it sounded like he got an extension for it from someone who wasn't Illuminati, and that's a little bit different. So she could have terminated him a few days earlier than this and just not told the staff person, and they're using this as proof that he was fired after the deadline. But the reality is she could have fired him before the deadline, or on the original deadline, because there's an extension added, right? So this was part of an extension. She could have fired him right at that deadline and just not told anyone, and that doesn't make it 100% clear here.
Deadline even happened. Before we begin, I'd like to state that I was informally...
So unless that was Illuminati talking there, that's not the same as just some other random person, like a manager, for instance. He could have already have been fired, and the managers may not have known.
Fired on a phone call July 27th that I received my final...
Okay, so that's important. Let's go back a second. I wish I could not go back by 10 seconds versus just frames.
On a phone call July 27th that I received my final severance letter July 30th. But as you can see here in private DMs with an editorial manager,
Okay, so here's the thing. Was this editorial manager up on completely up on everything? Because there's a good chance he was fired on the 27th. Blair could have fired him on the 27th. And this is completely irrelevant if this person may not have had authority to increase the deadline. And that's where I think a lot of people probably missed. There's a good chance she fired him on the 27th, and that's what that was. That was the whole point of that call. That was him getting fired. All right? It has nothing to do with the August 2nd deadline extension. That is completely irrelevant to this scenario.
Deadline was extended to August 2nd. I was fired within my deadline. To add context...
No, you were probably fired on the 27th. And you're saying that you got an extension deadline, but you were extended from a random editor that may not have had authority to give you that extension. That's a problem.
Blair not streamed for the...
Blair streamed June 26th. This was Blizzard stream that was being worked on. Okay, that's
the entire month of June, and come the further end of mid...
This video was filmed July 21st. Okay, so
July, she had finally streamed. I was given one stream that would result in 2 videos having 20-minute plus durations on both videos. So for context, these were not short clips, rather 20 to 40-minute chunks of content, which...
I mean, sure, yeah. Maybe he did do editing for the one video that she was actually, contracting him for. But here's the thing. Colorado, or wherever he was working, was probably an at-will state. There's a good chance it's a at-will in most cases. He could, and in most places, even non-at-will states, you can be fired for any reason within the first 90 days. So she fired him within the first 30 to 40 days, right? And she doesn't even need a reason. She could just do it because she felt like it and she just doesn't like him. That's it. She doesn't need a reason.
Is exactly what I signed up for. This in itself was not a problem. However, upon getting far into making the video, my editing software corrupted.
Okay. Then what's the problem here? Just format your PC and reinstall the editing software. What? Okay. Having a problem with the laptop and the software keeps freezing and crashing. There are something where yada yada yada. Okay, so the only why would you fly to Colorado to get a desktop? Just go buy another laptop. That would be cheaper. What? And yes, I'm aware you need semi-decent stuff for the edit, but it would just take a little longer to encode, and you'd have that backup on a $400 laptop. That's not a reason to go back to Texas and then back to... This is not a very good excuse, Wonder. You don't fly back to your home state to go grab a PC.
Said in a statement that it was pleased with the ruling, which would allow it to continue to use treatment. So that's from this article.
Okay. So yeah, so Wondershare Filmora, it's not just a key that you own, by the way. You can just download it to any random PC. That's fine. You just download the file, and then you put it on a different PC, and you open up the editing software again. That's it. It wouldn't take that long to transfer the majority of the assets.
Cool.
I was staying with my dad in Texas, which we'll touch base on why in a little bit here, and only had my laptop, which had never had an issue before. I had this laptop for roughly, I want to say a year at this point. Never once had I run into a software corrupting issue. So I reached out to an editorial manager explaining.
Why didn't you just do a system restore on your PC and download the original, like download all the information onto a USB stick, do a system restore? Because it was probably an update that messed it up. I mean, you're obviously somewhat tech literate. What? And even then, why would you fly to Texas and then fly back? That's going to be a massive waste of money. Just go buy another laptop at that point. And I know Wonder, by the way, had money at this point. There's a good chance that he wasn't living just with no money. He should have been able to easily go buy another laptop. At the very least, he could have gone to Best Buy and financed the laptop, and that would have cost him $50 a month for the next couple of or a desktop. The whole point of going back to get a laptop for this does not make sense.
In the situation, they asked that I take PTO, but instead I held off because Oz Media said he could get my PC fixed. I was running out of time, but my deadline initially was July 26th, so last second I flew to Colorado.
This doesn't make sense. Why would you do that? Just go buy another laptop.
To get my computer just so I could turn around and fly back. It was at this time I had noticed I was locked out of the editor files, which I found odd given.
Yeah, but it sounds like he had been fired in advance by Illuminati at this point. The other editor that was pushing for the deadline extension probably had no idea what the heck was going on, because there's a good chance Blair fired him without telling anyone else.
Given that I was still within my deadline, but I didn't exactly know what was happening. I just had figured it was an error at the time. I'd like to make note that the other editorial manager explained to me that my deadline at this time had actually been extended.
But who extended it? I want to know who extended the deadline. Because if the editor extended the deadline without talking to Illuminati, this doesn't matter. None of this matters, because that means Illuminati had already fired him. There's a lot of missing information here, but I don't know if this can be used as actual evidence, because unless Illuminati had actually posted that this was the extension, a random editor can't necessarily be trusted here.
To August 2nd. The editorial manager reached out to me on the 26th saying we needed to talk. For one reason or another, this conversation got pushed to July 27th. I believe this was just due to a simple scheduling conflict. I believe by the time I was able to take a call, that like when I had seen the message, they were busy for the rest of the day. So it just got pushed over to July 27th. It wasn't like I was like ducking the calls like, oh my goodness. It was here on this call that I was fired for explicitly not.
Okay, so he was fired on the 27th. What is in question here? It doesn't matter if his extension was till August 2nd. He was fired on the 27th of July. Don't work on the extension. You're fired. Stop working for them. What is going on here? That doesn't make any sense.
Not meeting deadlines, which I find highly confusing due to, once more, I must reiterate that my
That doesn't matter. This deadline does not matter. Okay? It was deleted the moment you were fired on the 27th. Okay? It doesn't matter. The deadline was extended, okay, by this person to August 2nd, right? On 7/24. That's irrelevant if Illuminati wants you fired on the 27th. You lose access to the extension. That original extension probably had nothing to do with Illuminati. And that's unfortunately the truth here. That's not how this works. Okay. And I just don't understand that. This doesn't make sense. If I was working for a company and my direct manager is like, "Oh no, I'll give you till the 2nd," but the boss is like, "You know what? I don't care. I'm going to fire them anyway." Guess what? The big boss wins. I still get fired, and my main manager doesn't doesn't override the other manager who is above him. That's what? This doesn't
was
work.
August 2nd. Not to be redundant, but I'd like to remind you that I flew to another state just...
Why did you do this? This doesn't make sense. Just go buy another laptop. I don't get this part. Why would you fly to another state to go get a computer? That does not make sense.
To meet this deadline for my boss, who was constantly subtweeting about me. You can see...
Yeah, okay, the subtweeting is bullshit. She shouldn't have been doing that, but, I mean, that's
acknowledged
stupid.
Even by one of her own managers, and they told me specifically...
Be careful on Twitter. You're under an NDA. That's not true. So NDAs, though, only disparaging things about the company, yes, but not if it's abuse against you. That's not how it works. You can't be sued if you were abused by the company. I mean, okay, you can be sued by the company, but they're going to lose.
Specifically that this was not okay behavior. A few days later, after being fired on July 27th, on July 29th, Blair came to Texas to revoke a car. And
okay, yeah, he was definitely fired on the... I don't know why he kept bringing up the extension, because the extension was not from Illuminati, and Blair was the one who fired him on the 27th. The whole extension is irrelevant.
In the middle of the night, which she claimed I breached contract, which we will get to in a moment as to how this was not the case. But
yeah, this is what I'm actually interested in.
First, I want to just take a moment that I hope this sheds light into just how far I was willing to go to ensure that these video deadlines were met.
Yeah, he was willing to go really far to see some of these video deadlines met. But, I mean, he was probably fired for just Illuminati not liking him anymore. It was probably just for the fact that they were living together, and there was a bunch of things she hated about him living there. It probably had nothing to do with the company. And in this case, because it was within the termination period of 30 to 90 days, it's different for each state. She could fire him for literally any reason, and just not liking him is a good enough reason.
I was willing to fly exhausted and tired and not on great terms with my boss to fly to another state just so I could meet a...
Did she tell you to do this? I want to know. Did she tell you to go fly to another state to get this project done? Could you have gone to another store and just bought another laptop and re-downloaded Filmora, because that was probably through Steam, all right? Could you have just done that? Could you have bought another copy of the editing software and just moved everything over? I want to know that, because if you could have done that, why would you fly there to do this just because you have your desktop there? That doesn't make any sense.
A deadline. I sincerely cared about my job, and I feel it is just extremely wrong to paint me in a light as some lazy individual.
He's not lazy, but it doesn't make sense to why he did some of the things he did. And then that's the thing.
Just didn't care at all. It was extremely hurtful after showing the links I will go to just show that I am a good employee. I wish my computer still worked and that I hadn't deleted these files, because it just seems worse, because it makes it sound like I am being very anecdotal when it's...
I mean, look, he probably wasn't fired for anything to do with his actual editing. I'm going to be honest here. It is unlikely he was actually fired for his actual skill and his actual editing deadlines or anything like that. He was likely fired because Blair hated living with him and hated everything that he was doing at the house. And that was probably it. That was the entire reason he was fired. And yeah, it may be stupid, but because she could fire him for any reason and she didn't state why he was fired specifically for that, there's a good chance that there's just no recourse there.
It's not the case. My laptop literally just does not turn on anymore, and I didn't think I was ever going to need these videos in particular to prove a point online on the internet about my work ethic. As for the finalized video that I completed on the desktop after my laptop did not...
If you take a look at his channel, he's got great work ethic. His videos are great. This has nothing to do with work ethic, I don't think.
At work, I don't have that either because I have reset and rebuilt my computer I don't know how many times, and you can see photos of me right here and tweets about me talking about how many times
Wonder, you just need a pre-built at this point.
I have taken a swing at trying to fix this computer. As for the inappropriate comment I made on a forum, I have never heard of this. Blair claims to have a strict policy on discipline, yet why didn't
That's rich coming from her, considering she just randomly hoards random nonsense from people and then also does her own stuff in the background.
she or her staff ever reach out to me about this problem? Why does she not provide evidence on this comment, and what forum? So I reached out to Oz and I found the answer, and the comment I made was supposed to be grounds for termination. I'd like to reiterate that means a total loss of income to a person. This was along the lines of the comment that I made. If I could be an animal for a day, I would be a furry, and my favorite food would be ass.
That's not inappropriate. Okay, it's a little inappropriate, but there's no way that's the grounds for termination. That's maybe a warning. Maybe. And that's a maybe. And that wouldn't even be a written warning. That'd just be a, hey, don't say that again warning. That's not a termination grounds. That's absolutely ridiculous on Illuminati's part. She should have just been truthful. I can terminate you for any reason I feel like because you're within the period where I'm allowed to do so. It's an at-will state, probably. Let's double check because I want to see if Colorado's an at-will state because that actually will change my opinion of this. Yep. Colorado is an at-will employment state, and you can be fired for any reason. Okay, that there doesn't even need to be grounds for termination within the first 90 days. She can just terminate you because she just doesn't like you.
You can't make this up, man. Total loss of income because I said...
Okay, that's also not 100% true because his actual channel was still making income. So he still had 2 jobs. Yeah, he lost income from Illuminati, but she would still need to pay him out for the first month. And that's not exactly total loss of income, especially when he has a second channel that's also making money. He wasn't losing money on that either. So that's not 100% true, Wonder.
As a joke, I said I was a furry. I don't know. In regards to my pay on the surface, $50K a year sounds beyond generous for editing a channel. I'd agree. I was personally astounded. I moved my entire life to another state
Yeah, you shouldn't have done that. You should have at least stayed 6 months where you were first to see if this was going to work out. And that, unfortunately, was just being naive. Now, a lot of people would do this. Now, the other option is if your family life was just absolutely horrible. But it sounds like you were pretty good on that regard. You had good family members for the most part.
Because of this number, I figured I could really make something of myself with this type of income. However, I'd like to go back where she mentions the benefits. Blair lists an array of many wonderful benefits that I could receive as an employee.
Yeah, those are basically useless.
I'd like you now to look at what I earned during each pay period here. Now, I'd like to reiterate this is at face value. I'm more than willing to stand corrected if I'm wrong here with numbers. You can see here on my screen that the amount of money I made during each pay period was 14.
That sounds about right. That's actually a pretty decent pay period. Let's see how close I was to the original number. Let's see here. Calculator. 4, 3, 4. Pay period is probably bi-weekly, it looks like. 2021, 617 to... Yeah, that looks like bi-weekly, so okay. 20... Okay, so yeah, that sounds about right. There's probably about there's a little bit of a difference there, but for the most part, this should be fairly accurate with how taxes work.
$1,534.24. I made this twice during my employment with Blair. If we do the math on that, we can divide this number by 2 to see how...
Okay, $3,000 a month. That's actually pretty decent. So don't forget, he also had $3,000 extra to leave the state, so it's not like he had nothing.
How much I made on a weekly basis.
On top of his other channel.
$717.12. Say roughly there's 4.25 weeks in a month, $3,047.76 per month. Okay, well that leaves a big question. Where's the rest of the money?
In taxes. It's all in taxes. Now, to be fair, a lot of people who go from hourly to salary don't automatically get that jump. And I'm sure a lot of people have made this distinction. And 1 second. Yeah, that's correct. So then there's a lot taken out by taxes.
So I did some more math. Let's say that everything had gone according to plan and the house Blair built was done in August like it was intended to be. I believe.
Oh, I think it's because YouTube, a lot of creators don't realize because of how YouTube treats contractors. You basically get paid the full amount when you get your pay, but you're supposed to take out, 30% and just hold it off onto the side for your taxes. And then you pay your taxes every quarter or every end of the year, depending on how your taxes work from YouTube. And I think that's where, in this case, it's even worse because he probably had worked from hourly and then straight into content creation where he's effectively an independent contractor, which is responsible for his own taxes, which hopefully he was paying. And then moving into a salary position, which is maximum taxes taken out in most cases first. And then there's also other things that are taken out based off of what the business offers, for instance, matched healthcare and things like that, which are on top of that. Matching
the range
401ks.
For the rent was $1,500 at the time, so around $300-ish for utilities. Now throw in a car that I have to pay Blair for the next 2 years.
Okay, what? Okay, there's something here.
$47.76 per month. Okay, well that leaves a big question. Where's the rest of the money? So I did some more math. Let's say that everything had gone according to plan and the house Blair built was done in August like it was intended to be. I believe the range for the rent was $1,500 at the time, so around $300-ish.
That sounds about right for the area, probably.
For utilities. Now,
water would be about $50. Electricity would probably be like 35 to 50. Internet, you wouldn't need crazy fast internet. You could probably get away with $50 or less internet. I'd say utilities probably be closer to $200 or less, but okay, $300.
I'll throw in a car that I have to pay Blair for the next 2 years.
Yeah, that was a stupid purchase. I do blame Blair for this one.
$588 a month plus $125 for insurance. Now let's add in, say, $100.
Yeah, I mean, BMWs are not cheap on insurance.
$100 a month in gas due to it being a car that relies on premium gas. So after all this is said and done, my take home before food, clothes, leisure would look more like this every month. A grand.
Okay. That's a lot more than a lot of people have. A lot of people are even lower than that, but all right.
Total of roughly $434.
But here's the thing, though. He would have had an extra 6 months or so potentially to save if he was staying at the Oz's house this whole time. So he would have had a minimum of like $20,000 in savings if he was actually smart about this. If they, hadn't been subjected to a train wreck of a person who would like to control everything, right? If this person was normal. So there's also that.
$76. However, given that the house wasn't built, right, this wasn't the case, and I was making about $1,000 take home. Well, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe that isn't so bad. I do, in fact, have a car, I have a house, and I have a job. However, the one scary thing when you put all that on a spectrum is they are all provided by one single.
So this is where this falls apart a little bit.
Singular individual, Blair.
This is where this falls apart a little bit. The house was Oz's alone, and only Oz's, not Blair's. I don't know why Wonder thought this was Blair's. So there's either missing information with Oz's house, or Oz controlled the house. And this is nothing because, don't forget, Blair's other house fell through, so it's not controlled by Blair. It would have been controlled by Blair, but it wasn't. So his living there was only controlled by Oz. Blair may have had a say in a lot of stuff just by her whining about it, but the final say would have been from Oz. So as long as he stayed on Oz's good side, he probably would have been okay. Which I still would have moved out, by the way. I would have moved into an apartment. The car. Why didn't you keep your original car and just get the back bumper fixed? You said it worked great and still works. Why did you move to Colorado without a car and take her up on her crazy offer of a BMW when you were a brand new creator. If she was going to give you a company car, she should have let you use the company car and maybe you pay a rental fee for it. You know, my boss did that when I worked. I was able to take the work van home, and I just had to cover gas and insurance. But the wear and tear was actually covered by the company. So, you know, that's a more reasonable reason of doing it that way. The only thing that makes sense is Blair wanted another BMW, and she figured, you know, maybe Wonder won't be able to pay this off for me, and I'll be able to repossess the car and take it back. That's tinfoil hat theory. But, I mean, yeah, his income is coming from her, and the car is coming from her. But as long as he's making payments on the car, she can't just take it back from him. That's not how that works. It's a rent-to-own contract. It's not a rent, and if you piss me off, you can't, I got to take the contract back and shred it contract. That's not how that works. If in essence, he effectively owned the car as he was making valid payments on it. But, you know, Oz controlled the house at this point, but he could have easily, and he had enough money to go get an apartment to pull himself out of that scenario. But he didn't.
She had a hand in every single aspect of my life, and at any moment she could take it away when she felt.
The only thing Blair actually had a control of taking away was his job. That's the only thing she could have actually taken away from him, and she did. She fired him. All right, that's it. I don't know why he got, within a month of moving there, he got a car from a BMW company and got talked into that through Blair. Blair was an idiot for doing that. Why would you do that with any employees? I mean, that doesn't make sense. But the only thing Blair really had control over on Wonder in this point was his pay. Everything else was, you know, Oz. Oz controlled the house. It was his house. And then if Wonder really wanted to, he should have had the money to move into an apartment. He said he was looking. He could have easily just moved out. It's not 100% control here, like a lot of people like to paint it as. I'm not saying Blair isn't a psychopath. All right, we already all know that. Okay, Blair is absolutely a manipulative psychopath. But you know, even as a young 20-year-old here, you still do have a little bit of a responsibility here. You can't just blame everyone.
Which is exactly what happened. Where I could be wrong about the pay itself is where I received my final check at the end of the month for $15.70.60. I was told this was my bi-weekly final pay, which makes sense. But when I signed a severance letter, I also received $15.70.
Yeah, that just means you weren't going to take any additional action against the company, etc., for probably forcing you to move out of state. This was probably a buy-off point to help you get back to whatever state, you know, Texas, that you lived in.
So this was either severance pay or this was the allocated amount I would have made via the LSA.
No, that was your severance pay. They gave you an extra biweekly pay. That was just your severance pay. They didn't even need to do that probably, but they were actually nice when they gave that to you.
Every month if that was how that operated.
No.
Even reading this aloud, I am still highly confused as to how this payment structure works, as it was never properly explained.
Okay, so yes, they should have explained how the pay structure worked, but he probably should have researched a little bit on how salaries itself worked, because it's not really a job's requirement to tell you where every single dollar is going to go. You check your pay stubs, and the pay stubs tell you where every dollar goes. So if the pay stubs weren't telling you where every dollar was going, there's a problem. So you should have been getting a check, or you should have been able to request a check, a paper check. Even if you were getting direct deposits, you should have been able to request your pay stub, and that would have told you where every dollar went.
To me. But even if that were the case, it doesn't change that in order to keep a roof over my head, food on my table, and my dog's bowl and transportation, I had to be walking on eggshells 24/7 due to someone's unpredictable and erratic behavior.
Yeah, and this is probably why he was fired, unfortunately. Do not live with your bosses. Just don't do it. I understand why he did it. It was much easier, and there was a bit of a lie in place saying that he was going to be able to move into one of her houses right off the bat. And guess what? If that had been ready right off the bat, then this probably wouldn't be an issue, because he'd still have his own personal space within his own personal living area. As it stands, he was living with Oz, which, yeah, controlled the house, but the problem is he was also living with Blair. And Blair used this, probably, you know, her distaste of him and what happened in the house itself, to fire him, which never would have happened if he was in his own apartment. He probably would have still been fired at some point, but it probably would have been a whole different ballpark. Well, okay, no, he probably would have quit. He probably would have been fired at some point because, the extensions would have made a lot more sense. They actually would have been real extensions, versus her just willy-nilly firing him on the 27th for whatever the heck happened there.
There is not, nor will there ever be, a price you can pay me to where I will put up with being a verbal punching bag. It will never happen as long as I live. So if I'm wrong, sure, I would have made some money. Probably net over $1,000 a month, which again isn't bad. But if my numbers are right, I'd be sitting at $717.12, give or take.
Yeah, his numbers were a bit wrong here, but that's okay. I mean, that's a minor inconvenience. I'm sure a bunch of people have already explained to him about how the taxes work.
Times that by 52 weeks in a year, roughly $37,290.24 a year, as I've stated, give or take.
Yeah, that's about right for a $50,000 salary.
So I tried to dig a little deeper into this LS.
Taxes wreck us, don't they?
Say Blair mentioned. Once more, I'd like to add that I am not entirely versed in legal speak, so I read through the LSA Blair provided in her video, and here is what I could personally gather. Each month, I was given a company allowance of
that's actually a pretty decent LSA. I wish I had that.
$100. If I did not use this money, I would not be allocated these funds, which again, I'd like to note is stated to be entirely optional. If I purchased an item and submitted a receipt, I would be reimbursed this allowance, and if I bought something without the full allowance, I would be allocated, I believe, an additional $100. The smaller payments would appear on my paycheck within 30 days, but larger ones could take upwards of 3 months. But where I have a hard time understanding these numbers.
None of this has anything to do with what his pay was, though. This has zero to do with that. This is a company bonus. All right, that's it. There's no money coming out of his paycheck for this. Aside from the taxes, there might have been forced health insurance that was being removed from the paycheck. So that could be a little bit of the additional income loss.
Numbers is if I use the monthly allowance of the 300, waited and received 300 on my paycheck, my total income would be $1,570.60.
No, that's just a coincidence.
The $1,434.23 was due to me being a new hire. But where I'm having a hard time understanding these numbers is if I use the monthly allowance of 300, waited and received the 300 in my paycheck, my total income would look a little different. We're going to go off the number of $1,570.60 since the $1,434.23 I believe could be due to me being a new hire, but I am not entirely sure where this number comes from and why it varies between this paycheck right here.
I want to know why you didn't get a pay stub. The thing here that's missing is the pay stub. Your pay stub should tell you exactly where every dollar went. So if you weren't getting a pay stub, that's not good. You shouldn't be just getting a direct deposit with no pay stub. You should have access to your pay stub at all times.
$1,870.60 plus 300, that comes out to $1,870.60. But in Blair's video, it is stated that I made somewhere near the high 1900s. Well, as it turns out, I was actually able to find a number in this ballpark. I was paid $1978.38. But if we zoom out, we can see that
yeah, okay, great. That looks normal. Gross pay, yeah, that's fine. That looks fairly normal. Why is my brain not working real quick? Yeah, that's about accurate. Man, look at those federal taxes. So horrible. I kind of hate federal taxes.
this was actually my gross pay, meaning again, from what I can understand, my take-home in reality was $1,560.
Yes, your gross pay is your $50,000 salary
per paycheck. So from my understanding, this would mean in order to come close to obtaining my full paid amount, I would have to rely on the LSA, and at most, I would be reimbursed to a maximum of $1,870.60 if I use the maximum.
Okay, this is obviously all wrong, but that's okay. We're just gonna
every month,
let it
then
run through.
waited in upwards of almost 3 months to see this reimbursement. The only reasoning I can seem to wrap my head around for this would be so the company could have on paper that I made a salary of $50,000 a year, when in actuality, this technically isn't the case. After doing these numbers and re-looking at them again, I'd like to make a correction to my already made correction. So for my
To be fair, a lot of people make this mistake, so I can't really just directly fault him for this.
Say I would be paid $300 per month, not per paycheck, so my number of $1,870.60 isn't accurate. Well, yes, I could get paid that amount. The next paycheck would only be $1,570.60 again, as a $300 reimbursement is limited to once per month.
We really need to teach our high school students like basic finances for a lot of things, don't we?
This would allocate to a total annual maximum of $3,600. I'd like to bring up once more that the reason I didn't complete tasks was not because of me, but because Blair never provided work until mid to late July. And when I worked, I went above and beyond to ensure it was completed. And again, I was fired within my...
No, you were fired on the 27th. Okay, this August 7th extension deletes the moment you were fired on the 27th. It'd be like me saying, hey, I've got an extension for this part. Oh, but I ran my work van into a tree and got fired. But it's okay. I got an extension till the 25th to the 2nd or whatever. I mean, you were fired on the 27th. That's all there is to it. Final check was processed by the 30th. It was obviously, because it says right there, final check on the 30th. This is already in place. You were already fired. It doesn't matter about this extension. The extension deletes.
My deadline. I hope this adds some context that was missing from the video. But moving on to our next section, let's speak on legalities. They proceed as such. Blair touches on the subject of a BMW she purchased for me due to my old car dying and wanting to help a friend out.
Wait, but you said your old car still works fine and is in Texas. That doesn't make sense.
I'd like to clarify, I did not ask Blair to do this. In fact, I insisted on our first call the exact opposite. I am not a luxurious person. I like nice things like cozy homes, but the most expensive car I have ever owned was a $5,000 Miata, and that was...
I understand why Wonder got sucked into this whole nonsense with the car, because I assume Illuminati painted this amazing picture of, hey, we'll all have BMWs, we can all be like the BMW squad, which is dumb. But you know, I can see her being like, being able to convince him to switch over to this. He really should have just been like, nah, I'm just gonna go over to a used car lot down here and just buy another car, because it sounds like he had enough money to do so and put on at least a payment plan.
Was a surprise gift from my dad after my first car got stolen. I do not desire expensive things, as that just personally is not who I am. Also, as a person who does not like when people buy me things, I was extremely uncomfortable with someone making such a large payment towards a vehicle on my behalf. But in Blair's words, she had the money and insisted that I get the car. After a few...
Yeah, this right here is where I consider this financial abuse to a degree. Now, I wasn't aware that Wonder had actually earned the $3,000 as yet. I thought he was fired within his initial period, and he wasn't actually earning the full amount yet. But it doesn't really matter in a lot of regards. I still think that he was still locked into an interesting position. But having said that, because I've mentioned in the previous comment that I thought Wonder was more financially abused, I think it's a little bit different because she controlled his pay, but that was it. And then the car situation. This situation's weird. I don't know why he agreed to it, but I also don't know why she in her dumb wisdom decided to do this, because she didn't just put her name on it. She put Oz's name on it, and I don't know why Oz agreed to this, considering he was obviously letting them both stay at the house for free. Co-signing on this is a bad idea, because it still puts him legally responsible if Wonder can't pay.
Few more discussions, she eased me into the idea that this car was a good move and would really change my life. I never saw the paperwork on the car. I never did...
When does a car ever change someone's life? A car is to get from A to B, and that's it.
Any of the work to obtain the car. The most I did was go into a call with Oz and Blair where I got to choose seat colors. I had no idea of the process or what I was really genuinely getting myself into, which I don't see how you could argue that I did. I was 21 at the time. I can't...
Okay, that's not really an excuse, though. You still signed a contract for not knowing what... Okay. Yeah, I get you're young, okay? That's a thing. That is a thing. But after you turn 18, you do have some responsibility to learn how some of this stuff works. You can't just blame Blair for you signing this contract.
I can't think of a single 21-year-old that I know that has gone out and filed paperwork for a $50,000 to $60,000 car. I didn't...
You shouldn't have done it.
Not know what I was doing. However, Blair would oftentimes tell me that she herself had enough money to retire at any...
Yeah, you shouldn't have listened to her either. And yeah, I get she was being manipulative here, but I don't know. It just doesn't make sense as to why you would just automatically be like, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to listen to my friends.
any given moment. Now, she was a very successful businesswoman, and from the surface, that did seem true. Blair even had a few BMWs of her own, as well as Oz at the time, so I trusted my friends who seemed to have it all, and I trusted the process, which...
Okay, so Blair already had a couple BMWs. Apparently Oz had a BMW. So it sounds like Oz not only had a house payment to take care of, he probably also had a BMW payment to take care of. And then he was signing himself up for a second BMW payment if Wonder ever couldn't pay his bill.
Again, I found out was a very bad mistake. The car itself was delayed, I believe, by
At least he realized it was a
2
mistake.
weeks, so when it finally arrived, I was pretty happy. I felt like I was beginning life like my friends.
Oh, cool. I actually have a new functioning phone, so I can actually do fun video stuff.
However, things
Were you driving at that point while on the video? Oh, wait. It looked like he was in the passenger seat. Maybe I'm not. Maybe that's better.
in the house were growing fairly grim. I was in therapy at the time and trying to do what I could to help out and also stay out of the way. I felt my brain start to shut down. I could barely function as it was. I would just drive out in my free time to this little trail. I guess you could just call it like a private spot, not really because it's in the public, but it was a little nice cliffside, and I would just hang out there because I didn't have any work at home and I just was not wanted around. I explained my situation to my therapist. It was a pretty similar message I sent to my friend in private. I miss feeling independent.
Yeah, he should have been looking for... He shouldn't have gotten this car, and he should have been looking for an apartment. Because without this car, he would have been... Everyone would have been a lot better off if he had actually gotten himself an apartment. So if he was there for a week or two, probably would have been fine. But I think getting the car basically made it so he couldn't actually get an apartment very easily, because nearly $600 a month car payment only works if you don't have any rent. That's not just like living paycheck. That's like barely living paycheck to paycheck.
And living rent-free for 6 months, which I did not sign up for.
And that's the other part. Yeah, so let's say he did live there for 6 months for free. It's not just 6 months for free anymore because he has a $600 car payment now, which after the 6 months, he won't be able to afford off the $3,000. At least not very easily.
Is making me feel like a burden and sick. I really feel like I'm losing touch with myself, and I'm not sure who I am.
See, this is where I think Illuminati was starting to use control for Wonder for a financial point, because then she was making it so he literally had to pay her a massive chunk of that money back for that car. Once he was going to be living at her house, he would have been paying her $1,500 a month in rent and around $600 a month for the car itself for at least 2 years. $50,000 car, maybe a little bit longer than that. Okay, so he would have been paying, of the $3,000 he earned from her, he would be giving her back $2,100 every month. And he would have had almost no option to do anything else. Now, the other upside is he probably was still making $7,800 on his private channel. So he was probably actually making closer to $3,800 a month, assuming he didn't just give up his entire private channel. Which he shouldn't have. He should still be at least making residual income of $500. So he was probably still making, we'll say $3,500 at minimum. But still, that does not leave a lot of room, because that didn't include utilities, which is probably $200, $300 if we go with his stuff. That would have literally locked him into a very precarious position here, and everything would have literally been controlled by Blair at this point. This is where I made my original assumption that he was more financially abused, or would have been, as it was being set up to be, than Oz. Because Oz still had a lot of control in the fact that the house was his. And for the most part, until he signed that other contract where he was going to lose the house, at the very beginning, it was more of his personal decisions, whereas this one seemed to be, being forced into a bunch of positions.
At the moment.
Yeah. Okay, this is nothing directly to do. Wait, what? She was. If I don't change my location on Twitter, that commentary channels could pinpoint our location from Twitter and raid the house. So she was super afraid of being doxxed. Okay. I mean, that's a potential insecurity. That kind of makes sense.
I told my therapist at this point that I hadn't felt real in a while, which anyone who has suffered with dissociation and dissociative episodes can all but relate to.
Yeah, he was basically super bored, and he is not used to being super bored. He was used to basically constantly working, massive amounts of time. He should have been working on his own channel while he was waiting for stuff for her to come in. That would have probably helped him out a lot. But I think he kind of went all in on the $50,000. He's like, oh, cool, I can kind of cut back on my channel type of stuff.
I also reiterated how everything was starting to feel rather pointless, and I didn't know what I was. That's so lame. I don't like to get emotional, but I didn't know what I was doing wrong. After hearing this, she made it urgently clear that I needed to leave the house immediately. Which
I don't understand is why she was able to do so. She didn't own the house. This is Oz's house. She shouldn't have had any say in the matter. This should have been Oz's decision if he was going to kick Wonder out. But here's the other thing. Wonder was a tenant. It would have taken him, they would have been required by law to give him a 30-day notice from that point. And it was probably taking a couple of extra days as an actual eviction notice. So I don't know why this should have never happened. Blair should have never have even said that. She didn't have that power, which is bullshit. She should never have even said that to Wonder.
Again, sorry, I need to calm down. In hindsight, I didn't realize how bad it was getting at the time. Yes, it had just never been that bad. Oh,
yeah, no. Wonder. Yeah, I mean, I really feel bad for Wonder here, but the reality is Blair did not have the power to kick him out. And that's a huge thing, especially if Oz didn't say anything. If Oz was fine with it, the only thing Oz could have done was kick Blair out. And probably what he should have done.
So lame. She said whatever I needed to do, I just needed to go. So with no work, my only options were being in a home with someone who won't even speak to me, as I believe.
Yeah, but it wasn't Blair's decision. Blair treated it like everything was her decision, but it wasn't. She was also a freeloader, it seems, in that house.
I believe Oz had gone to visit his father at the time.
Ah, I see. I see what happened. Oz wasn't home to say no. Ah, that's a bit different here. But she didn't have the authority to do this. He could have. Yeah, okay, that's bullshit. Blair had no authority to kick him out.
Or I could go visit my father and just spend some time with him. So I chose option 2. I explained the situation to my dad, and I ended up leaving to go see my father so I could spend the 4th of July with him and stay a while so I could mentally reset. I also did digital work, and this was not in violation.
Okay, so this was before he was fired. Remember, he was fired on July 27th. So this happened the 20 days before he was fired. So there was obviously a ton of shit happening in that house that Blair was getting pissed off at. She was going to fire him regardless. That's all there is to it at this point. There was no way she wasn't going to fire him, and it was probably going to have nothing to do with any of the videos. She was probably just holding off on putting out videos so she had a better excuse to fire him, even though she didn't even need one. She could have just fired him for not liking him.
Of my employment, as I could work wherever I wanted via laptop. But before going, Blair had me sign her BMW contract she had.
Yeah, this bullshit. All right. So I want to see here. It's 588. Wait, what? It's not $50,000 BMW. This is a $15,000 BMW. So she was only charging him $14,000 for this car. This car is not a $50,000 BMW. Where did the $50,000 come from? Were they donate? That doesn't make sense. That means they only paid $14,000 for it. Maybe even less. So where is this $50,000 that I keep hearing come from for this car? Maybe I had that wrong. I swear it was mentioned a few times it was a $50,000 car. But based off of this contract, it's a rent-to-own contract with $588.34. That only goes out to around 14. Is that right? That can't. Am I an idiot? 588 times 24 is 14,000. Yeah. Okay. What? I don't understand this. Okay, so it's a $14,000 car, not a. So it was a used car, most likely. Renter will. Okay. The vehicle is registered. Sure. Okay, so it does say reside in El Paso County, Colorado, but you can't necessarily force that during the rental period. It doesn't matter. You can't just generally force that. If he leaves the state with it, as long as he's making payments, he can just call it a trip. It's not something you can just go and repossess the car off a whim just because it leaves the county. That's not a valid. You can't force that. Physical liability damage, sure. Responsible for insurance, sure. Insurance, yeah. Okay, registration, sure. All that's normal. Okay, paid by the renter, sure. All this stuff is normal for a rent-to-own contract. I mean, it doesn't look like a legit contract because it's just on a single piece of paper. In theory, you could get away with it if you could get it notarized, but it doesn't look like this is notarized in any way. So, now the thing is, they both signed it, so it could still hold up in court. Renter will own. So, okay, so here we go. So after Wonder pays $14,000 in payments, he would own the car free and clear with no lien or title issue. So let's say Blair paid $50,000. That means she offered this car to him for $14,000. It's most likely they bought this car for $14,000. So this was not a $50,000 car. And that's where I got hung up on a lot of stuff. The only thing that is weird is the vehicle will be registered and reside in El Paso County, Colorado during the entire duration of the rental period. I don't think this is enforceable. The rest of it makes sense just from a general common sense standpoint. But I don't think this part would be really enforceable. You can't force, because if he takes it out of the county to go visit someone, it's not like he's stealing the car. He's coming back with it. You can't just go and repossess it. So here's the weird part, and this is what I think a lot of people missed. This agreement was signed on June 29th, 2021. All right? He took the car on July 4th over there, right? The first payment wasn't due until July 15th. If he didn't make this first payment because it wasn't due yet, I don't know if she could in theory legally repossess it because he hadn't made any payments on it yet because it wasn't starting until July 15th. Now, she shouldn't have given him the car until July 15th. So they should have started day of. It should have started day of, and then every consecutive payment would have been started on the 15th of every month. This is really weird. I mean, the problem is what a lot of people seem to have forgotten. This all happened within 30 days. And there's something really, really odd about this. Just little time frame between the 29th and the 5th of July.
Had been meaning to get to me for a while. She was fully aware of my intent to visit my father and stay a while, especially given that, again, I worked remotely. You now know the events that led up to July 29th, where the car was...
Okay, so the car wasn't repossessed until July 29th. So, okay, that's... okay, never mind then.
Repossessed. You know, the story of the deadlines, how I wasn't kept on payroll, how I flew to Colorado to make sure said deadlines occurred, etc., etc. We don't need to fully recap there. As Blair mentioned, she said I was legally bound to this car via contract. However, after I was fired and Colorado was said and done, I had my father, who is an ex-police officer, and...
Okay, an ex-police officer is not going to know enough about contracts, okay, in most cases. You don't talk to a lot of police officers don't know a lot about law stuff, okay? I'm not saying he doesn't know about law stuff, but let's face it, a lot of police officers will come to you and say, oh, no, there's no actionable thing to take here when someone's like, doing something at your house. But in the reality, there is actionable stuff. You can sue them for it. Lawyers know
former
stuff.
Contractor, as well as a lawyer friend of the family, look over and review this.
Depends on the type of lawyer. It really depends on what the lawyer specializes. If they're a copyright lawyer, they may not have any idea what the heck this is.
Legally binding contract. They both agreed that this was, in fact, not a legally binding contract.
That's hard to say. They both signed it. It wasn't notarized, so that would be the big thing. The contract does look very suspect, so it might not be legally binding, at least not in 100% aspect of it. But let's say it is legally binding. All right, that also legally binds Illuminati, meaning she can't just go repossess the car on July 29th for whatever reason, just because it happens to be in Texas at that point. Even if it says that it can reside there, or it has to reside in the county, doesn't mean that he isn't on a visit. Because for the moment, even though he's in Texas on July 29th, he still technically hasn't moved back. He's still technically a tenant and a resident in Colorado. So it's most likely she illegally repossessed this car because he was up on payments.
I am not a lawyer, and I don't know how that fully works, but let's say for argument's sake the contract was legally binding. Blair claims I broke the contract by the following: no proof of insurance, cars to reside in El Paso.
Insurance generally takes at least a week or two.
County. Okay, well, here's my proof of insurance.
623. So you got insurance before. Okay, so my guess is the car was purchased beforehand, and it just took some time because this is all before the contract was made in place. So that makes sense. That's all accurate.
And here,
change of address. Yeah, sure. Now, to be fair, this actually doesn't work. I actually tried this to get a post office when I moved to my new house. We didn't have mailboxes working correctly because it was a brand new build, and I tried this to get a USPS post office box, and they said this wasn't a valid enough useful information for the move. I couldn't actually get a PO box in my area because the change of address through the post office, it can be done by anyone. It doesn't mean anything. So that unfortunately doesn't always work right.
Here's my official mailing address during this time. You can clearly see it states Colorado. Here again, you can also see that my mailing address has not changed after the repossession. This car was not residing in Texas, as I did not
Correct. He's correct here. He still resided in Colorado, and they would have had to have given him a 30-day eviction notice.
Reside in Texas. I lived in Colorado.
Yes,
I'd now like
correct.
to point to a conversation I had with Oz Media.
This is where I think Blair did something highly illegal, and she went back and effectively stole the car that was well within payment, by the way. So he wasn't behind on payments, which means she stole the car. Upsize, it wasn't $50,000, it was $14,000.
Yeah, because Blair and I were not on speaking terms at this time, which was something she herself suggested took place between us. July 28th, 2021, one day before the repossession, Oz and I had a phone call together where I stated I would not be moving back to Colorado. He agreed it was probably the best option for me, as he was still at this time sympathetic towards everything happening. Note, again, the car did not...
Okay, so here's the thing. Once that phone call happened, generally how it works is that means you're choosing not to come back to the state. And you're in most states, once you've chosen to move to another state, you have 10 days in most states to switch your residence. Let's check for Texas. California is 10 days. Let's take a look at Texas. This is actually interesting. It's called... here we go. Required... Texas doesn't seem to have a specific law regarding that, but it's likely within 14 days of telling. But it doesn't matter. Illuminati would have had to have waited till August 20th to repossess the car at the minimum in most likely.
Not reside in Texas, as I did not have a residence in Texas at this time. Upon hearing this, Blair informed Oz that she wanted me to pay something that is known as a depreciation value.
Okay. Interesting. That's
which is essentially, it's like, okay, you can't pay for the car, so you're going to pay for the value that the car lost while it was in your possession. I agreed. I didn't want further bad blood.
Okay, so you had the car for like a month. The car would have lost $80, maybe 200. I mean, yeah, cars lose money when they are off the lot, but this doesn't sound like it was a new car. It was a used car, so it was already really close to its original value, most likely. I'd say it probably only lost like $80 to $50.
I just
maybe.
wanted this whole situation to be done, as
Which
it had
was
caused
wrong.
me enough stress as is. Oz gave me a set of options as to
Continue to keep the car, but with additional amount per month, with full payoff in a few years. Okay, that would have been probably the ideal solution. Drop it off when you come to Colorado. We'll need to update the lease. Sure, that makes sense. Signed okay, and Blair will come down soon and take it off your hands. So, did he sign the depreciation contract right away? If he did, that would probably give Blair the go-ahead to just take it right away, and then you sign. Then you figure out the rest of it at a future date. So if number 3 was signed, there's a chance that she could have just come down and taken the car and repossessed it without actually telling him.
what I could do with the car, and I picked option 2, where it was agreed I would bring the car back to Colorado.
Okay, then. Well, that's a whole different ball game.
Gather my belongings, and I'd pay the value via regular payments, etc.
So here's the thing. This car wasn't just in Oz's name. It was also in Blair's name. She also had equal rights to how she was going to handle this. So she could have just completely ignored Oz on number 2 and just went out of her way to do it herself. Now, the problem here is the car was still within payment period. So if he paid that first $588, she had no right to repossess it until at least the 15th. So,
etc. However, when I asked to see everything my name was tied.
Yeah, okay. This is on the 27th. So look, this was on the 27th when he was fired. He was definitely fired on the 27th. You can probably base it directly off of this stuff right here. So this also kind of further proves, though, that extension means nothing. And that the managing editor was just in the wrong. That's all there is to it. He was obviously fired on the 27th. So that's a little bit of a red herring, I think. I'll not be keeping the car. I'll do option 2. I need to see all the paperwork. Yeah, that's all fair. That's all makes sense. So this is like Oz trying to reach out and being like, okay, cool. I'll give you all the paperwork from my end. But I don't know if Oz was talking to Illuminati at this point. It seems like she just did her own thing.
Tied to legally with the car, which any person would do. I was met with a copy of the...
Okay, so this pops up on the 27th, which is the actual BMW contract. Okay, this is from the car dealership. Saying the total price. So here's the thing: the car itself wasn't actually tied to Wonder in any way. It was tied to Oz and Blair. This is primarily on them to deal with. And I wonder if the car was entirely in Oz's name versus just Blair's, because Blair also apparently had horrible credit at this point, so it could have been just tied to Oz. I would say it's probably tied to both of them because Blair was illegally allowed to take the car. But the depreciation value on 15 to 20 day or 15 to 45 days is not a lot of money, especially if the car is not a brand new car, because it doesn't sound like it was. It sounds like it was a $14,000 or $15,000 or so used BMW.
The car contract. So I asked again to see the paperwork of the car. This was to ensure I was obtaining an accurate account of the car's value so I could legally assure what I was paying for.
Smart.
I believe that any person in my position should have done this.
Yes, that's exactly what you should have done.
It is the only right thing to do to make sure you legally know what you're paying. After this message,
Okay, see, this doesn't make sense. Oz and Blair spent $61,000 on this car, but the rent-to-own contract was only for $15,000. Okay? That is, or less, it was $14,000. So he should have paid the depreciation on what his rental contract was, the $14,000 based off of what he was paying, not on the original amount Oz and Blair decided to pay. That doesn't make any sense. That would require him to pay a ridiculously because once you leave the lot, it's going to lose a ton of money just right off the bat, and that's not the depreciation value. That's just how much you lose buying the car off the lot. The depreciation only changes over the course of like a year. It wouldn't change over the course of a month. What the heck happened here?
I never once got a response. Later in the early hours of July 29th, 2021, Blair flew down to obtain the BMW. Hours after I agreed to pay for the car's appreciation value under the condition that I was paying what was
Yeah, Oz and Blair were not talking here. Or they were arguing in the background, and Blair disagreed with Oz on this regard.
accurate and visible to me. I did not have the text itself, as currently the phone I had at the time suffered, I believe it was a corrupted UI.
Oh my God, you have worst tech ever worst luck ever with tech. I swear, I have a friend who walks into a room in a router shorts.
All I know is I had a Google Pixel, and after some time, I believe last year, I plugged in the phone, gave me a big old question mark when I charged it. So I looked it up, and I was like, what does this mean?
Yeah, that's not the Google Pixels had lots of problems.
Essentially, it just meant, yeah, your phone's kind of buddy. So if anyone knows how to pull images from a UI corrupted phone, please reach out and contact me, as I will happily provide these texts if I'm able to do so. At roughly 3 a.m., Blair sent me a text stating that I had breached numerous contract violations and that she was in Texas to repossess the vehicle. It goes without saying I was asleep at this time, so obviously I did not see a message that was sent to me at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, she's pretty good at picking the best times ever when she knows people are sleeping, huh? Yeah, she shouldn't have been legally allowed to take it, because even if it's not residing or in the county, it's not where his current house was at the moment. He still hadn't switched his mailing information. And then there's also the fact that he was still up on payments, so everything was accurate. I just don't know why they agreed to a $14,000 payment for this car when apparently Oz and Blair both paid $61K for this car. So there's a bunch of stuff missing here.
Woke up and I saw the messages. I asked Blair for an explanation as to how I breached my contract, to which I was ignored. However, Blair stated she would make arrangements for me to obtain my items. This never took place. I took to Twitter, where I made a tweet.
This is where she threw all his stuff out, isn't it?
Regarding what had just happened, and I was immediately reminded by one of Blair's managers that I could not speak out on the matter, and I was threatened with NDA. If I had to explain...
Guess what? You could have actually spoken out on this matter, probably, because this has nothing to do with the actual company, and this editor was probably wrong. This had nothing to do with the channel. That's not what this was. So unless her company had other things to do with this was an absolute lie. Now, to be fair, the editor may have not understood NDA at this, but you can totally speak out against abuse.
The feeling I felt helpless. Again, I just wanted to do the right thing and do it the way I was asked. And now I wake up and all my belongings are gone. I cannot explain how weak that makes.
Yeah, you should have absolutely brought this up, because this is nothing that has nothing to do with the company in any way.
A person feel. It feels like
nothing
just
to do with
a massive, a massive fuck you for no reason.
Oh,
Blair puts in her drive that the car had bottles, a few.
Okay, so what? That takes like 3 seconds to clean. 3 seconds. There's no major scuff marks on any of the seats. Everything looks pretty good there.
Wrappers and some clothes. What she fails to show in her video is my skateboard.
The back. There's no major scuff marks in the back.
Both my Sad Milk and Wonderstruck Guy play buttons. My $800.
Let's see here.
GoPro set and
let's see. I don't see the GoPro set, but there's a lot of stuff hidden under stuff in there, so sure, I believe it's there.
And a whole
box containing personal items, camera, PlayStation, game console. Sure, that could all fit in there. Where's the 4K computer, Meyer? Is that hidden under? I guess it was wrapped in the. It was probably wrapped in the
what do you call it? That blanket. So that's probably where a lot
A
of the
list
stuff
of
is.
other items I was prohibited from obtaining, which I found out recently from Oz. These items were subsequently thrown in the trash after some time. I'd like to touch on
Yeah, usually you're required to hold on to a certain amount of stuff for a certain amount of time. I guess the question is, how much time did they give Wonder time to go get the stuff? Like, for instance, if they held on to the stuff for like 4 months, right? Technically, Wonder it would have been considered abandoned property at that point if Wonder never went and got it. Yeah, they would have been in Colorado, and yeah, Wonder may not have been able to get there, but he could have offered potentially the shipping cost, right? Now, they wouldn't be obligated to necessarily ship it to him, so they would be obligated to hold onto it, and he could arrange for an Uber pickup or a pickup from UPS or something from the house. But we don't have that information, so I can't really make a judgment on this. If she threw it out the moment she got the car, that's a whole different issue, but I want to know how long they held on to it.
on the condition of the car as well. It looks bad, and truthfully, if I saw that, I would turn my head as well. I
It's
would
not
think
that
this is a
bad.
madman who owned this car.
Oh, that's garbage. That just looks like normal trash in a car. I don't see like vomit everywhere.
But I'd like you to remain open-minded that I was basically living in this car due
Yeah,
to not
sure.
being able to stay in the same house as Blair, as my therapist recommended specifically that I do not do that. I did not have a home to go to,
Yeah, good therapist, smart.
and I was on my dad's couch most of the time. As for the cracked
I mean, a crack could have come from anything. I've gotten cracks on my windshields from driving like 100 yards behind a truck that had rocks spewing off of it and didn't notice it. That's pretty normal. It doesn't look like a baseball bat hit the car or anything. What's really weird though is take a look at you can kind of see some of the wear and tear on the hood and stuff. I don't think this was a $61,000 car. It doesn't make sense. This is damage that happened within, like 3 weeks. Remember, this is a short time span. This is not like he's had this car for years. But look at like the maybe that's snow. Let's see. No, this is August. Okay, so this happened within a month of purchasing the car, right? Maybe a month and a half. Look at the damage on the hood right there. I guess that could be water spots. If that's water spots, then it's just water spots. But it looks like there's light, wear and tear over years. So it looks like this is an older car that was, bought at a lower amount. I don't know how this is $61,000.
windshield, that was due to a semi-truck pulling out in front of me on the highway.
That happens all the time. Oh, example of perfect road condition. Okay. Yeah, this is not what happened. Okay.
There's a lot of people out there who have probably experienced it. Sometimes semi-trucks
That's the whole point of Safe Light.
will get pebbles stuck in their flaps and they will fly and they will ding the windshield and it's a crack. It sucks, but it happens. There's no way I myself could have pulled off this effect on this car. In regards to the glove box, I really
Okay, those things are garbage. Those things break all the time.
don't know what happened.
Look at the amount of damage though on the under part here. This is really pushing towards this was not a new car.
I went to get something out of the glove box and it just popped off. It's a small piece of plastic, and the BMW dealership in my town was more than happy to fix these issues when I visited them, which is a record
I don't know. It's kind of suspect that this was a new car ever. I think this was a used car. Allegedly.
Blair herself has. When I got the car, I was told it was insured via the BMW dealership, so I would have to
I don't know if it'd be insured via the BMW dealership. It would be under warranty potentially via the dealership.
have my own insurance, and then BMW had their own separate insurance.
Interesting. I've never. To be fair, I haven't bought a car since 2013, and it's a Ford. So, I would expect it to be the BMW warranty system through BMW, not necessarily insurance through them.
Insurance. So if something happened with a car, I could go to the dealership, show the issues, and they would happily fix the issues for no
Oh, this is part of the package that they got, the protection package. This is a protection package. It probably isn't a normal insurance.
No charge at all.
It's a
Which
different
again,
thing.
Blair has a record of me visiting the dealership due to the car blowing a flat due to A, low profile tires, and B, a pothole I didn't see due to nighttime and rain. They told me I could bring the car back whenever I please, and I intended to fix these issues before going back to Colorado, as returning it in such a condition would make no sense. After
Well, yeah, you would lose money based off the depreciation value just off that.
authorities were sent to my house the following morning, I explained the situation and the officers relayed their official opinion that I should cut contact with Blair.
Smart, yeah. I mean, the reality is, though, you know, the officers weren't going to be able to do anything in this case.
To which I did. I sent her one last text stating I would be ceasing communication and that she could reach me and make arrangements for my belongings via my father's number. Not one attempt was ever made. Legal demand letter.
Okay, well, he should have made an attempt to get his stuff back, actually. He should have made at least one attempt to get his stuff back. And he should have called Oz, not Blair in this case.
Were sent and signed off for. You can see the draft.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so she had the car back on the 29th of July. He got the car apparently, so he had the car for 30 days exactly. He made one payment of $588, which means he should have still had the car until at least August 15th. Now, he probably shouldn't have had the car, though, before July 15th. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he had the car for only 15 days or 14 days. So that's part of the issue. She shouldn't have been allowed to repossess it. That's the biggest thing I can see here. Okay, let's take a look.
After such a demand letter and what it looked like on official paper and my
I still had the demand letter lying around. Okay, so Oz had this. Wait. Okay, this is 2023. I was so confused for a second.
my Google
Yeah, I don't
Drive.
think she was able
After
to get the
months and
repossession.
months of trying and receiving no communication or update, we were told by someone who represented Blair to back off or they would go after us for harassment.
No, that's okay. Okay, so they did try to get the stuff back. Okay, so that changes my opinion of that. So this is definitely on Blair for throwing away that stuff, and she probably wasn't allowed to do so because looks like he was offering to make pay for shipping and everything to get this stuff back. But she did this as a big FU to him.
I know this is scripted, but I really want to reiterate here that I felt small. I felt defeated. I had literally left my apartment for this. I lost my independence for this. My belongings, either tech-related or just memorabilia, were and are still gone to this day.
Oh yeah, this was still a big loss, even though he made $3,000. Well, actually, technically, he made $4,500 because he got that severance pay. He would be lucky to have broken even because the problem is when he came back to Texas, he potentially has to get a new apartment with an even higher lease amount, which he could have actually stayed in his original apartment, which, man, imagine just staying at home for an extra month. None of this would happen. To be fair, it might still happen, but it just would have been a little bit longer. I guess the moral of the story here is do not move into your boss's your brand new boss's place until you have an established rapport. And then even after that, never, ever move into your boss's house.
I didn't want to upload because I knew every time I did, I knew Blair was probably checking my social blade laughing at me as I had seen her do to every single...
Okay. I mean, you guys know my stance on Social Blade, but a lot of people do put a lot of trust in Social Blade. Obviously, Wonder did at the time. He probably doesn't care anymore, but at the time, he probably put a lot of trust into how Social Blade works, and it's a completely useless stat for the most part. But I totally get it. That totally wrecks with you, especially when you know the person is doing this.
Former Sad Milk member for months. I had no way to prove to my friends why I had seemingly high hopes for the future, and in the course of a summer, I had almost no money to my name due to Blair's butterfly effect.
I mean, you still made $4,500 from her, so how did you lose all that money within that time? yeah, you moved, but if anything, I think it was a wash. So maybe he had no money before this point. Maybe that's why he moved out there, because he was running low on funds. Maybe his channel wasn't doing as well as it was on in January. Remember when he had $8,000 in his checking account? Maybe within that couple of months he started losing a lot of money and a lot of just income in general. So maybe that's part of it.
None of the friends I had made would talk to me, and like OT and Click, rumors began to spread about me too. Admittedly on a smaller scale, but they were still about me nonetheless. I was fired. Blair had taken the car as well as my belongings. My life had been set back to square one, which leads me to my...
Yeah, it was set back, definitely, but it was only set back within Blair's company. He was still making income from his own channel, right? It wasn't like it was deleted, so it's not like he had no income. So being set back to square one would be, literally nothing in the bank at all. He had at least had $3,000 from his last 2 paychecks. We'll say $2,500 based off of, driving back to Texas and various couple of expenses, but he also should have still had some income. He should have gotten at least $500 to $800 from his own channel, and then he should have had additional money coming in for August from his channel. So it wasn't like he was completely stuck at zero.
My next and most painful section, my mental health, which was proudly put on display for the
this
world
was
to see
absolute bullshit.
For some reason. Before we begin, I'd like to not so much trauma dump to a bunch of viewers, but rather give you the...
Well, I mean, it's part of his life. He's the whole... This is a huge part of what happened.
Full scale of where my mental health arises and such. I feel it is important to share this context, not just for me, but truthfully because there are a lot of people out there who remain silent about these kinds of things, and I want them to know they aren't alone. I'd also like to make 2 more notes. First, there's going to be a trigger warning, one involving self-harm,
Okay.
and child. Another warning, this is probably going to be the section of the video where I don't know how to be very professional in this manner. I feel it is best that I just show you how raw this actually is, because trying to paint it in any other light just doesn't show the extent of how painful this actually is. Now, when I first saw Blair speaking upon my mental health, admittedly, I shut down. I was rightfully broken and disgusted that so many people could see the insight into my mental health. Something very...
Yeah, what's really weird about this is, now, a lot of Blair's own fans called her out on this horrible thing that she did, but just as many were like, it's all Wonder's fault. That's absolute bullshit.
Very private and a lot of times met with shame. There were so many things I wanted to say when I saw that. So many nasty and vile words of venom I wanted to throw into the void due to this becoming public on Blair's own doing. But it's not Blair's story to tell as to how I got to this point. It's mine. So when I want to say 3 to 4 years old, I was assaulted by a family friend's son. This was someone who I trusted, someone who I looked up to as a kid. This occurred for months, and without going into explicit detail, my parents found out. I remember being a kid and just seeing the abhorrent look of terror and tears on my parents' face, not being able to understand why they were so upset. Over the next, I guess, year or so...
Yeah, that's absolutely awful. And the fact that Blair then used... Most likely she knew about this, so... The fact that she used this against Wonder in her video is awful. It was one of the worst things ever.
So court proceedings took place, and the teenager who had assaulted me went to juvenile detention. My parents never really explained well what happened to me, which I can't really blame them. I can't really imagine myself in their position trying to explain that to a 4-year-old. The family who we had once been very close with no longer spoke to us, which felt strange because I lived in the same neighborhood as these kids. So when my brother and I would pass them in, say, a grocery store or at the pool, it was always met with just, like, silence and stares. I didn't understand what truly had occurred or the extent of what had occurred. I just recall knowing that in my head...
I'm honestly surprised that family didn't move away.
This was my fault somehow. And to clarify, I don't believe this was anyone's fault that I felt this way. My parents were just doing the best they could, and the rest of us were just kids. There was literally no way for any kid around me to know what I was going through unless they themselves had gone through the same thing. Even I myself at the time didn't know what was happening. Why am I telling you this seemingly dark and unrelated set of information? Because I feel it's important to the story in its whole as to show the context of where this began. My mom suffers from chronic chronic OCD. The brain can develop OCD due to an early childhood trauma. This is known as post-traumatic.
Yeah, OCD is debilitating, and I can definitely guarantee you it is because I have OCD, and it's really debilitating for you, but it actually can be a lot worse for those around you, which is a huge problem. Yeah, no, I get this.
OCD, but at the same time, I was also predisposed due to my mother. OCD has many forms, and it's sometimes hard to understand if you aren't suffering from it yourself. But in my specific case, OCD worked as such. I knew I had something bad happen to me. However, I didn't have a way to get a direct answer as a child. I just knew my reality was filled with a lot of questions and no real way to kind of answer said questions. This is where my brain started to fill in the blanks, as I guess you could say. It started setting me up with.
Yeah, that's the brain will do that. If you have a huge traumatic incident, what it'll do is it'll make up stories to try and make sense of things. Yeah, I get that.
Situations where I did have control over my surroundings. This could include an intrusive thought regarding, oh, if you don't write a sentence 15 times correctly, your parents will leave you. And if I ignored such an intrusive thought, it didn't go away. It persisted over and over, causing me extreme stress until.
Yeah, that's exactly how OCD manifests. And there are medications to help with that, but they don't always work. I'm on a decent one now, but for a long time, it manifested in some very destructive habits, some of which I'm still dealing with.
I did the action, therefore validating it and giving me an answer somehow in my head. It's very confusing, but it's just how it works. Eventually, it got to a point where I could barely function throughout my childhood. I feared death from a very early age. I feared that my loved ones would get harmed, that people would hate me, and that I secretly wanted to harm someone and I didn't know it. During an already hard time in my early teens where my parents were getting divorced, I went on to take something known as fluoxetine. You might also know this as Prozac. It's a very popular antidepressant. For years between each.
Yeah, but that one can also mess with OCD. It actually makes things worse in a lot of ways. It's good for depression in a lot of ways, but it's really, really weird with OCD. Kind of like Zoloft or sertraline. You can actually take sertraline or Zoloft for OCD, but it's usually at a much higher dose. So, for instance, where depression might be like 50 mg to 100, OCD is usually 200 to 400 on that scale, and it causes some weird side effects. So be very careful. And OCD medication is still a very complicated field because it reacts very differently for everyone, but a lot of the medications really, really mess you up when you're first starting them out. It usually takes about 2 weeks to 6 weeks to actually get a decent dose going correctly for you, and then half the time that medication doesn't work for you, and you have to start all over with another medication, and they're considered black box drugs, which is they can build up in your system depending on who you are, which means you have to keep shifting the dosage level. It's a huge problem for those of us who have OCD.
Each household, I would have either one parent encourage me to take my meds, or I'd have another parent encourage me not to do so. I remember just how irritable and awful I felt on said medicine, but I also was going through a very hard and confusing time.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the thing. Most of those medications don't work unless you take them consistently. You can't just take it one day and then stop. You have to take it consistently for weeks on ends, and it takes at least 2 to 3 weeks for it to start working correctly the first time, and then you have to stick with it, because if you stop, it resets, and then you restart that. And by the way, a lot of these medications cause debilitating headaches for people because it's messing with the serotonin levels in your head.
In my life as a teenager in a new city who was also going through a divorce. Like, needless to say, it was excuse my French here, a shitstorm of mental, whatever you want to call it. So when I was 16, I decided to quit cold turkey, which is a massive no-no. It was hell at first, and it was not fun by any means.
Yeah, I feel for him on this one. That is a really bad idea to do with these types of medications.
But after a few years, I really started to notice my symptoms had become manageable. This isn't to say you
good.
should stop taking your meds by any.
Hey, if you can do it without medication, all the power to you. I can't, but I'm incredibly proud / happy for Wonder for being able to do that, because OCD is incredibly debilitating, and it makes you do ridiculously dumb things a lot of times. In my case, you're gonna get to listen to me talk for 3 hours about a bunch of repeat stuff.
Means I just couldn't afford my meds, and my father at the time didn't think they were in my best interest, so I just personally would try to combat most of these things myself. I really hate bringing this up, but it feels like a cop-out on my part, but it's the turn of events that ended
No, I mean, it's a major part of a lot of people's personalities, and OCD does have a massive effect on what you end up doing, and I can kind of see where that came from.
up taking place as to why this ties in to where we are at. About halfway through the pandemic, I was working from home. It was during this time that Sad Milk fell apart, and I hopped onto the bandwagon of witch hunting my former colleagues and friends. Something I am ashamed I ever even took place in to begin with. Oz and Blair lived together.
Well, at least he apologized for it.
Together for many months, so they both had each other during this time. Particularly post-December, it would just be me by myself in a room alone. I saw my roommate, who again I mentioned is one of my closest friends, but at the time he had a job as well, and it just was more or less short conversation of, hey, how's your day going? And that really was my social interaction for weeks at a time. Aside from that, I would just be in my room constantly editing. It was here in this environment that my OCD started creeping in slowly until it grew into a full-on sprint. At this time, Blair...
That can help when you're doing work, but it doesn't help if you're one of your OCD habits is to buy things, you know, like compulsive spending. Then it becomes a really big problem. It does, OCD absolutely does help when it comes to certain types of work, but then the other thing is, if you can't, a lot of people, me specifically, if I think I can't do something perfectly, I'll go do something that I know I can do perfectly. For instance, gaming. For a long time, I was addicted to video games. Did you know they actually have video game addiction centers? I didn't know, but you know, they do. So, and that was where we figured out a lot. And this was before I figured out I had OCD. This was actually the trigger point where I figured it out. But yeah, no, what he's saying is absolutely accurate on how OCD manifests and spirals you out of control.
Had already offered me the job, but I was still debating if I wanted to go to Colorado. So I sat on it and I thought really hard. Thought about my dog and how I'd always wanted to provide a home for him. Thought about the pain of leaving my loved ones and my friends of almost 10 years. But I also thought about my future for the first time in a very long time. Thought about how I could afford therapy, something I hadn't been able.
So I want to know, this $50,000 salary job from Illuminati, was it only on the condition that he moved to Colorado and move into one of her houses? Because if that is true, then that is absolute financial coercion. And a lot of companies do this. I mean, that's why there are company towns in a lot of places, and they will offer that as an option, but you'll end up, you know, and that's where a huge thing on company towns comes into play. It becomes a huge problem.
To do for for a very long time, how I could really maybe make a name for myself on the platform, and how I could maybe just for once have full control over my life and save myself from the constant cycle I had been stuck in since I was a child. And so I agreed. This is a part where it's gonna really suck if you get uncomfortable really easily. I took the job. I went back on my meds. I said goodbye to my friends. I shared.
So remember he said he was having depression in when he was working for Illuminati. He went back on his meds. It takes at least 2 to 3 weeks for a lot of these meds to start working correctly. And for those 2 to 3 weeks, you're all over the board. You're kind of like manic in a lot of ways. So there's a good chance that he was completely out of sorts for this whole Illuminati saga while he was in Colorado. And that's not saying that he was causing major problems or anything, but it was definitely going to cause major depressive episodes, especially considering that medication messes with depression and OCD.
Tears with people who had been family to me. I'm just gonna blur this out, man. I said goodbye to my dearest friends who I did everything with. I said goodbye to my home. I knew I was doing the right thing, and everyone with either open words of encouragement or painful goodbyes in private. So fucking hard to read, man.
I mean, yeah, I get it. He's probably never moved out of the state. It's a lot of people have when they're moving for the first time have this issue. In my cases, it was a little bit different. I've moved well over 65 times. I've lived in a ton of different states. I never went to a school for more than 1 year, so I was never able to create these massive long distance. Like I have friends that are longer than a year, but that really didn't start until high school, and then even after that, it wasn't really a huge deal for me because I've always been used to moving between states. I move all the time between states, but for my wife, it was a whole different scenario. She had never, moved out of the state when we moved the last time, and it was a completely different, feeling for her. And she kept going back and forth on it. And I was just in work mode, getting all the stuff ready, giving all the movement stuff ready. So for Wonder, I can totally see from an outside perspective now where he's coming from. A lot of people just moving from the one thing that they've known their entire life to a whole new thing is terrifying. So yeah, I get it.
They all held the same sentiment to me. They were proud of me. For the first time in my life, I felt I knew my purpose. I felt I was more than a burden. I felt like I was someone who mattered. I felt more than my trauma or my past or my OCD. I felt like I was just me. Then upon moving, if you've watched the video up to this point, you already know everything that's taken place.
He was back
so
within
when Blair
a month,
took
right?
the car, I knew I had nothing left but a few clothes on my back, and everyone would soon find out that the person they were so proud of just 2 months prior was back at home and broke. And for me,
See, that's the thing. I don't think he was broke though. And that's fair. I mean, he's broke in the fact that he's not $50,000, salary richer, and he doesn't have a stable income anymore. But I'm pretty sure his channel was still doing okay. It wasn't like he had shut his channel down, so he still had income. He wasn't completely. So that's the only thing. But I mean, this is still it's still a rock bottom situation for Wonder here because he lost everything that he was holding dear. It wasn't that he was monetarily broke, all right? It's that he was, emotionally broke, which, yeah, obviously, this is obvious. This is not something he's faking. This happened. There's nothing, funny about any of this right here. But I mean, I don't know, that does bug me, but maybe that's my OCD talking, but that's not really
I couldn't
excuse.
really handle that. I had tried so hard to show every effort that I cared, that I wanted to do a good job, that I wanted to succeed. And it
Actually, here's what he's talking about. When you fail, when you have OCD, it crushes you. It is like the worst feeling in the world. And I totally get this because it happens to me occasionally. When I first graduated from college, for instance, and it took way too long to get actual work, it just crushed me. And it is just this horrible feeling that you're, that all your hard work didn't amount to anything. And then what you do is you slip back into the bad habits of OCD, and they're, compulsive spending. In my case, video game addiction, playing games 18 hours a day. So yeah, I totally get where he's coming from. It makes total sense of why he's feeling this way.
ended up with me having nothing. I truly was a failure now, and nobody could say anything else because I couldn't speak publicly or I'd be threatened with legal action.
I think that's the biggest thing. He didn't understand how the NDA worked. He totally could have spoke publicly. This wouldn't have held up. But the problem is he also had no way to fight it. Yeah, let's say he had $3,000. Let's say he had $10,000 in savings. He could not fight Illuminati at this point. All right, Illuminati was a rising star in the drama community, and if he did go into a lawsuit against her, his channel would have been destroyed and torn through the mud, because he would have just gotten crazy levels of hate. So he would have lost probably at least 50% of his income instantly or more. And he was already way lower on the income scale because of this nonsense with the Illuminati. But then there's the other problem. She would be able to fight with actual lawyers, and he probably would have a public defender. Maybe his family could have pulled together, but he would have owed them a ton of money, right? He wouldn't be able to legally fight this with cash because lawyers are not cheap.
By this point, my mental health was in a full collapse. Everything was dark, and I felt I had nowhere to go, and that every exit just led to more pain. So while my dad was away, I sat at his kitchen counter,
I see where this happened. Okay.
thinking, reviewing my options, whatever that even means, and I chose that I wanted So, as Blair showed, I started to look for a key to a... Now, I'm not religious by any means. I don't have anything against anyone who is, but sometimes things just work in really weird ways. I got a call from my therapist as I was in the closet looking for a key.
Yeah, that's a good therapist, and I know, and I'm aware that Blair was the one who had recommended this therapist. A lot of people said that was a conflict of interest, but that's not really true. It's only a conflict of interest if your therapist breaks their obligations of HIPAA. If they go around telling your employer what's going on, then that's a conflict of interest, and you can sue the therapist. But that's not really. You can have 1,000 people and have one therapist for 1,000 people, and that's never a conflict of interest, though.
I had entirely forgotten that we had scheduled an appointment that day. It wasn't really on my mind. Nothing was really on my mind. I just wanted to stop hurting. I answered and she asked me how my day was going, and I told her, oh, not much, I just want to end my life. And again, I don't mean to laugh, but she said, well, how about we just don't do that and talk? Which was,
I mean, that's a good therapist, right?
it's just like, it was so crazy. It's just like, I can't even imagine. I mean, like, I guess they're a therapist, they deal with that, but I can't imagine what it's like. How's your Tuesday afternoon going? Oh, you know. But I listened and we did talk. I walked out and...
See, that's a good job, Wonder. I mean, yeah, I mean, I went to a lot of therapy for when I was trying to figure out my OC and the gaming problem. And yeah, it happens. I don't know if I ever got to that point, but I also wasn't subjected to Blair, so...
into my dad's bedroom, and I just cried on the phone for about an hour. And throughout it, I'll never forget what she told me. She said, you feared for the worst, you fought your whole life trying to avoid the worst possible outcome, and now the worst possible outcome has happened, and you're alive.
Right?
You know, I'm like, I'm still standing here, man. I personally had never thought of it like that. I truly didn't. So
yeah, something similar kind of happened to me during the I had a psychotherapist is kind of how it works. And I had a lot of group sessions with a lot of people who were, alcoholics and things. For whatever reason, alcoholics are in the same category, at least lumped together in the same category for OCD, at least for outpatient type stuff. At least it was for me. And that might have been just because I was in LA at the time. And maybe LA just has a different thought process on how that works for their therapy. But yeah, I mean, there's a point where, you're at your worst point when you, especially with OCD, and the problem with OCD is it locks you into a cycle, and it kind of feels like maybe like an addiction. So maybe that was kind of what he was feeling. I can't really say 100%
after
sure.
our calls, I was still in a living hell, but the idea had more or less left my mind. And so yeah, I did send Blair that heated message because I was at the end of my rope. So when Blair claimed she sent authorities to my house for a wellness check, she didn't care about me. She put in her own Google Drive that I brought the
Yeah, she thought she was going to be attacked by him, which is not how that worked.
of guns to the table, and she was locking the cars away and was scared, leaving out that the weapon in reference was aimed towards me. I know I'm
Blair is really good at twisting shit, isn't she?
supposed to be professional here, but I believe that text alone only showed she cared about her narrative of herself being a victim. And by
Oh, that's absolutely what she was doing. There's no question in my mind about that. It was highly doubtful that she was scared for you, Wonder. That is, and if she was, she doesn't do a very good job of showing it.
text with her therapist, she's trying to claim the Good Samaritan card, which is very contradictory given the tones of the perceived messages that I saw. Also, something I'd like to note is that I wasn't there when Blair called 911 to send authorities to my home, but depending on her wording, it could have gone very wrong. To tell authorities...
It could have easily been like a dox situation, or well, it wouldn't be it'd be very close to doxing, and Blair was very intimate, has some very intimate knowledge of doxing, considering she was super obsessed with people potentially doxing her.
There is a mentally unwell man with a weapon that can go so very bad, so very fast. So yeah, after this long, very drawn out explanation of my mental health, yes, I did send Blair that heated message because I was indeed heated. It wasn't a bluff. I had nothing to gain from this. I was at the end of what I could handle as a person. So to share this sensitive moment with the world, I don't understand what the end goal is with it. Now we're on to a bit of a
Okay, sorry. Yeah, that was pretty dark. I totally get a lot of Wonder struggles just because I suffer from OCD as well. Now his is definitely different. I can't claim my OCD is the same as his. OCD manifests itself in about 10 to 20 different ways, and everyone is completely unique. And then he also had his additional trauma from a kid. So in his case, it stacks. So I do get some of it, and I obviously can't get the rest of it because I'll never experience it.
lighter topic, because anytime I think of my dog, it brings a massive smile to my face. I love this dog with all of my heart. As we start to near the end of this video, I believe we have only 2 subjects after this. I wanted to touch on the claims made about my dog James and how I cared for this handsome individual. I love this guy, look at him. Blair for some reason brings up an entirely unrelated matter involving my dog James and I. She paints me to be a dismissive, uncaring father to a starving, aggressive, abused dog. This dog right here.
Yeah, that
this
was
dog who's scared of
that was really a weird situation on her crazy video.
Leaves. So allow me to shed some light. I adopted James back in 2019 from a small shelter in Central Texas. I remember seeing his cage and the information on it said class clown. So naturally, I had to say hello to this guy. Within the first 10 minutes of meeting James, I immediately knew that this guy was going to be my best friend. He was sweet, he was gentle, he was social, but he's very shy. Another fact about James was he was the dog that the staff would use at the shelter to introduce other dogs to see if they were friendly or not due to James' naturally calm nature. When I moved to Colorado, I did bring dog
I'm surprised they let that dog go.
food. It was just about half a bag though. James is
Oh right, she was complaining that he was starving the dog by not bringing any dog food. Well, guess what? You can get dog food anywhere, but I guess he had a special diet from HEB.
His brand of dog food is also specific to a store in Texas known as HEB. So I had to find him a new specific kind of dog food as he had a sensitive stomach.
Well, guess what? When you switch food out, it's going to cause problems in the house. And that's for any pet. It can be very messy, we'll say.
And switching his dog food would result in messes. But upon arriving to Colorado, Oz and Blair wanted to see if James wanted to try Casper's brand, so we just switched over to that. He loved it, and Casper has been known in the past for making severe messes everywhere due to his very irritable stomach, as he is a special needs dog. As for his collar, James did have a collar, but it was old and starting to wear. I went to PetSmart on my second day in Colorado and bought him a brand new dog tag alongside a red plaid collar, a collar which he still wears to this day.
Okay, then what the heck is Illuminati talking about? That's garbage.
Also did not lock Casper in the room to keep James roaming the home. I would put Casper in a separate room sometimes so James could pee, as Casper would bark constantly at the bedroom
Remember, they only lived together for 30 days. How much...
door which James and I stayed in. Whenever James was out, Casper would gnaw on his ears, which is something Blair did
Yeah, which is part of the Pika problem, right?
not mention. James did bite Casper. He made Casper bleed. But what Blair left out is that since Casper was a puppy, he has had a bad habit of gnawing on other dogs' ears. This is...
Yeah, and guess what? I mean, that's the thing. If your dog's gonna keep chewing on someone else's ears, they're gonna probably hit back at some point, right? Even if they're the most basic. Even if they're the most calm dog in the world, they're gonna be at a limit. It's kind of why you really shouldn't let big dogs play with babies, because they might make a mistake even if they're the calmest pet in the world.
due to him being around another dog named Percy who exhibits this kind of behavior. And you can see this dog exists on Casper's own YouTube channel. So one day Casper kept chewing and dragging on James, so naturally he snapped back. James only did this because Casper wouldn't stop attacking him. It wasn't the other way around. As for James getting out and pooping downstairs and me not helping clean
Whoops.
it up, there's a lot of reasons for this and a lot of context left out. The night James got out and got lost, I made a mistake and forgot he was out there in the backyard. I was in between helping Oz with something downstairs and going back and forth, but James needed to pee, so I tried the multitask. After like 10 minutes, Oz suggested we go grab dinner real quick, and we left for like 2 hours.
Oh, I see.
I personally messed up, and I take full accountability for it happening.
I mean, it happens a lot. I mean, I was at a job once. I've told people in the past I used to be a carpet cleaner. I was at a job once, and I went to this house with a 12-foot tall fence, crazy tall fence, and there's this random dog just running around the neighborhood, and it was a big like German Shepherd. So I'm always a little wary when I was out at job sites, because you never know how the big dogs react. Anyway, this dog was just running around like all over the neighborhood, all crazy, and I was like, huh, well, not attacking me, so all right, I'll just ignore it. Anyway, so I started cleaning this house or whatever, and the client was like talking to me and everything. I'm like, oh yeah, there's this dog running around the neighborhood. And he's like, oh, that's weird. And he's like, yeah, I had to build my fence super tall so my dog couldn't get out. I'm like, oh yeah. And he's like, yeah, let's go take a few second break and go see my dog, and we'll laugh about that other dog. He goes in his backyard and dog gone. And he's like, what? I have a 12-foot tall fence. He really had built this fence with like mesh barriers, those cat overhangs, so no one could jump over this. Yeah, this dog climbed up on top of a shed somehow and jumped over a 12-foot tall fence. He was just running around the neighborhood. He's like, gosh dang it.
I left James out in the backyard. But what pet owner hasn't made a mistake like this once or twice in their life? Sometimes someone forgets to close the door or the gate or whatever, and it happens. It's a story.
Okay, so this backyard had a fence of some kind, most likely.
As old as time. It doesn't mean you don't care about the dog. It just means an accident happened. What Blair again also doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, especially, and that happens, it's more likely to happen when you move to a new place, because you're more likely to not remember certain things about the new parts of your house.
Mention is that the backyard had a large patio area that Casper would take naps in, and sometimes James when they all chilled out together. The backyard was also fenced in. Blair leaves out that the way James got out was because a fence wire broke loose, undoing.
Oh, which means James probably pushed his way out, okay?
Some of the fencing along a post, allowing a small entryway into the neighborhood. Had this not come undone, James would be sitting on the dog beds.
Yeah, so James probably shoved his way through this little hole, and maybe have snapped that little wire. So yeah, this isn't on Wonder. He could have been gone 5 minutes, and he could have been out and about already and had no idea.
Waiting, which again, James being outside is my fault, but the fence failing is just human error. Blair talks about putting James on the Nextdoor app, which despite my reservations against Blair, this was a good act.
Which is funny because Blair was super against sharing their location with anyone, but okay.
But again, what she leaves out is she didn't get a call about James. I did. After James had run away, I searched for hours, well into the early morning hours looking for him. And when I couldn't find him, Oz gave me a sleeping bag. The very same sleeping bag you can see in this photo in the BMW. I slept outside in 40-degree weather just for the smallest chance that he would catch my scent.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely one way to do it. The other option is you put out a bunch of clothes, your dirty clothes. Put out a lot of dirty clothes around the house, and mainly at the two main entrances. If it's cats, a good way to do it is a litter box, actually. But yeah, you put something out with your scent on it, and that's smart. Yeah, yes, you can sleep out there in 40-degree weather as well, but you should also put out like a bunch of dirty clothes.
I was grasping at straws here, hoping that I could just find my dog on top of everything else happening. And I believe somewhere between 7 to 9 a.m., somewhere in that time frame, I got a call on my phone that James had been found not far from the house. I immediately got up, exhausted as hell, and I went and I picked him up. If Blair got a message on the Nextdoor app, I don't know how when I was the one who went and picked him up. So after...
I mean, the Nextdoor app, okay, so I actually have my whole neighborhood is on the Nextdoor and Ring app, and that thing is, people are obsessed with their tracking pets. Okay, so there was probably a whole thread tracking that dog. That's where she got the notification.
Bringing him back to the house, I brought him to my bedroom
just a public
where I
notification.
passed out. However, to my discovery, James had eaten something as dogs do when they get out, and he was shitting everywhere in my room. So I got up and I started cleaning. I put James outside.
Okay, so he was cleaning
the room while I cleaned it, and after I...
Okay, so she was blaming James. Fine, whatever. She obviously knew there was another dog. This was her basically. This was like a subtweet against this is a subtweet with her main account, just bashing Wonder.
I brought him back in, and yet again, I fell asleep. I was beyond exhausted at this point. What I didn't know was that James had run downstairs when I put him out, and he everywhere downstairs as well. So when Blair claims I just let my dog use the restroom and did nothing to clean it up,
So this happened on one single day? Then yeah, Blair's a liar.
Didn't know he had used the bathroom
Or-
downstairs.
Or
And
an
at this
extreme exaggerator. We're going to go with extreme exaggerator here.
point, I was already dead asleep. No, this wasn't malicious, and it was just a sincere accident.
Which is still a lie.
Seems hypocritical of Blair, who owns a special needs dog who suffered worse for
Yeah, Casper's sick all the time. Yeah, okay.
way longer. Blair claims that I did not assist with a mess located in the lower level of your home, as well as a staircase leading to said lower level of the home. What was your experience with the situation as the owner of this home?
Like, no shade to you, and like, you know, of course, but like no one like recounts the situation properly, because you weren't sleeping. I'm surprised that you even made that mention. You were actually like very well awake and already cleaning the mess up when we had actually got upstairs. What had happened was, woke up that morning, came out from the basement, and there was like, you know, a trail of dog mess is the best way to put it, kind of like just leading all over the downstairs. It went up and down the stairs, and you know, Blair and I, of course, we weren't happy to see.
I mean, if it was like, if his dog shit, it's actually a lot easier to clean than urine in a lot of ways. And this is me as my expert as a carpet cleaner. And I mean, they could have hired a carpet cleaner to come out too, which would have cost for spot cleaning. They probably would charge $75, maybe a bit less just for one trail versus doing the whole house. Yeah, it's a little pricey, but it's not that bad. We charge like $40.
See that initially, but when we had gone upstairs, you were already cleaning up the mess. Blair had to leave the house, and that left you and I with cleaning it, because you and I, we were actively cleaning it up. We were both taking turns using the pet vacuum. I was covering the downstairs and you were covering the upstairs. It's not like you just slept through it either. You were actively cleaning.
I'd also like to add that
Well, that just means Blair was lying about this part. Okay.
I did mediate between Casper and James a lot of time. When Casper and James would constantly be going at each other, usually not aggressively, they're just being dogs, I would calm them down using dog CBD oil. Yeah, you know, they were having a great time with that. So anytime
Yeah, my cat's obsessed with catnip. Like you can definitely see that. I wonder what my cat would be like on CBD. I'm not sure if that would work or not. Maybe in the comment section someone can tell me if CBD oil is safe for cats.
time they were getting rowdy, I'd bring them into my bedroom, give them dog CBD, and we would watch videos of this guy who raises hawks until they fell
Huh, interesting.
asleep. I would have James on one
That
side,
guy's got like
I would have
800,000
Casper on
subscribers.
the other, and they would just be cozy, relaxing, so they could be introduced to one another. We took numerous naps together. We hung out all the time. There are so many times I mediated between this dog, so to say I tried to do nothing, it's
I wonder if there was actually carpet at Blair's house. So let's say there's mess on the, or not Blair's house, my bad, at Oz's house. If let's say there's carpet, but there's no carpet on the stairs or anything, they're all rugs or something like that. Then it would be super easy to clean up the mess if it wasn't carpet based.
It's just not true. As for saying James had no toys, James did have toys. It's just when he'd play with them, he'd annihilate them within an hour. And he still has toys to this day.
I have bought my cat $2,000 worth of toys. Their favorite toy is toilet paper rolls. Just the cardboard rolls, empty cardboard Amazon boxes that their toys came in, and blankets. Every other toy, they don't even. They do like feather toys, but you gotta be careful with those.
My boyfriend and I just got him a snuffle mat last week. And while yes, this is extremely biased for me to bring up because yes, this is my boyfriend, you can find a Twitter thread listed down below of their experience with James and I after living with me for 6 months. I'd like to add, I did not ask them to write this as honestly, that'd be pretty messed up, especially given the circumstances. They took to Twitter via my phone after I went offline. But aside from that, here are some images of me and the big guy. Yep, he looks absolutely miserable, doesn't he? Alright, at last we have reached the last discussion of this video, and this is probably just gonna go by.
Yeah, I'm just going to say Blair was, if not outright lying about the dog situation, was definitely embellishing a lot.
Rather quickly. When I took to Twitter in my initial thread, I posted a photo that shows the disaster of a room. When Blair saw this, she had a pretty convincing switch around for this image. She claimed I went into a room that was being used for storage after they moved into their home, and that I was told to not go into this room ever, yet here I was clear as day posting.
I mean, the door is open to this room. It's not like it's just sitting there. So there is definitely carpet, at least in the bedrooms. It looks like that, that cheap carpet that a lot of homes have. I don't know. This just looks like a normal streamer's room.
Posting a photo to Twitter of a clearly off-limits room that I used to embarrass Oz and Blair, and that shows my clear lack of respect towards others and their privacy.
This was a room that we told you we were using to move, and we let you know it was off limits to you. That photo alone shows your consistent lack of respect.
Here's the thing, though. This is Oz's house. Illuminati may have been living there, but I don't know if she actually had any sort of actual real ability to push him out of any specific room in the house. Maybe, but it really depends here, because the way it's been explained a lot of times in these videos is Illuminati was just a freeloader in this house. So
Respect for Oz's and my boundaries.
She goes as far to even do an image breakdown analysis of the room itself to prove this image, which I found peculiar watching this for the first time. Because if she took this much effort to analyze the image, I don't understand how she didn't notice that the bed on the bottom left was not purchased until 2022. A year
oh yeah, that's funny. Which means he wasn't even there to take this picture.
after I left Colorado. How do I know this? Because I didn't take these photos. Oz did. And
Oh, jeez. Okay, so the main living area is where that vinyl kind of stuff, or tile. Oh, geez, this is like every room of their house is just like wrecked with boxes and random stuff everywhere. Look at that. Bags and bags of trash. I mean, yeah, this is not great, but
I held back out of respect for my friend. If you
Should've
look
shown that
here,
picture
you will see that
with
I
the date.
actually never set foot in that room. These are the living conditions of Oz.
they have never been vacuumed. As a carpet cleaner, this hurts me dramatically. But geez, look at all this stuff. Okay.
Oz Media's home after Blair moved back in. Conditions he was embarrassed by. Boxes.
Okay, that kind of looks kind of like an unboxing though. So I don't know about this one.
Trash.
Oh jeez. Wow.
Cups of mold. All sent to me again
It's like XQC's setup.
2 years after I left
Asmongold had one
Colorado.
like that.
And this is my proof that once more, I never set foot in that room, nor did I have malicious intent when I lived there. Blair embarrassed Oz, not me. In the video, I touch on an image I shared to Twitter involving the living conditions of your home while Blair was an active tenant. She claims these conditions were due to her being in the
Should have left the date on there.
process of a move, and that
I
I,
bet you
took
she
these
cropped the
images
date out.
with intent to embarrass the both of you. Would you be, in your own words, willing to shed light on these claims?
This is tricky to talk about just because like that was like the condition of living with Blair. Like that's always how it has been. No matter how many times cleaning was attempted, it always ended up becoming that level of mess. There was no cleaning in that house. It was always a disaster. No matter how many times attempts were made, it would take less than a week or two for things to re-messify. I even remember on my 22nd birthday, I had asked, like, hey, can we please get, like, the kitchen and living room cleaned up so we actually have, like...
Best birthday present ever. But yeah, no, I can see where Oz would be coming from this nightmare, because living in literal trash for weeks, months is just a nightmare, especially, horrible for me because I have OCD, so it would drive me insane.
Like a space to exist. And that was like my birthday present for that year, was cleaning the kitchen and the living room. Just because the house was always a mess. Yeah, some of it was mine as well, but the thing was there was never a home for, like, right now the house is actually, house is pretty clean.
Just empty rooms everywhere. He just walks around, he's like, yes, I love this. Never have a roommate again, ever. Smart. Okay, so that's a pretty big house, actually. I'm surprised Oz bought such a big house.
Right now I can show pictures of that, but there was no clean. It was old.
Yeah, there's no... I can definitely see why Oz would have a lot of problems paying for this house at $2,500 a month. in income. That would be stretching it beyond belief, most likely, no matter where you are in the country, for the most part.
Always like that. It wasn't just one room. It was
Jeez. Wow. Jeez. I mean, how do you even like do work in this area? You're a content creator. What else do you do? You should be cleaning for half your day.
was every room.
Oh, I actually want to see that. We're gonna go back a second. Yeah, a lot of it just keeps looking like brand new boxes constantly getting shipped to the house at like all times. Was Blair doing like hundreds of unboxings? I don't think that's what her channel is about.
And I remember when I was messaging you, there was just a level of frustration because it felt like no matter how often I would actually clean and do stuff, it just always like remessified. There was no cleaning. It just
Yeah, that would just drive someone insane.
felt useless, and she would never help with cleaning. It was always me.
I bet she was one of those people who would rather have a maid. Maybe she should be paying for a maid for this, but she was probably too cheap to do so. I really want to know if she was actually paying rent to Oz or for part of this house, or if she was just paying part of the utilities. Because if she was actually paying rent, then maybe Oz could have actually, survived with the house relatively okay. But I think she was a total freeloader, and from what I can tell from in most cases, aside from, and this is allegedly, she was allegedly a freeloader, and she was using her relationship with Oz basically as a way to not pay rent. And I think she was maybe paying, utilities, but that for two people would never be above $300 in most cases. Probably even less the majority of the time, unless you're running she said she had a crypto farm, but she probably had that in another location.
I was always the one breaking down all 800 of her Amazon boxes. I was always the one doing anything cleaning wise. It just felt like I was there to clean up her mess.
I'd also like to note that you didn't ask me to post those photos, and I, on my own accord, took to Twitter. So you can confirm that I never once was in there or took that photo. Well, I guess you can't confirm that I wasn't in that room, but can you confirm that I was not the person who took this photo?
For starters, the mess that I took the photo of wasn't even the same mess that existed in that room when you lived there. It was a very different mess. Just with everything that happened, the mess, it did get cleaned up, then it remessified. So that wasn't even the same mess.
I bet you Oz is going to keep his house as spotless as possible for eternity now.
It was me who took that photo because I was trying to both, for my sanity, catalog what the house looked like before I started cleaning, as well as just for my sake, just have proof that this was the case.
Which leads me to my final discussion. Oz and I used to be fairly close before Colorado. After the events that took place, we had officially turned against each other, and I didn't understand why he and Blair did what they did, because for 2 years I believed it was both of them.
So this was the point where, so originally I said Oz required some responsibility for what happened at the very beginning, but this point was probably where Oz was getting stuck within the contract of Illuminati. Right around this time was probably... This was probably where the point where Oz was way too far into debt, and he didn't have a choice. He literally had Illuminati. Blair was his only source of extra income at that point, and he was stuck. This is where he was being financially abused, yes. But at the beginning, he wasn't. When he bought this house at the beginning, he should have just stayed with that house and not gone on to any other additional expenses after that point, because he could never have afforded it. $2,500 a month, or his own channel would never have been able. He probably lost the majority of his money during the down payment. Most people sink as much money as possible into that down payment, and they don't realize they should probably hold at least 10% of it back if they can to cover the first 6 months, because they're going to have a lot of additional expenses that they're now aware of.
They're doing as to why I went through what I did. I never thought I would hear about Colorado and that what happened would ever be rectified. However, one morning as I was getting ready for work, I received this message from Oz Media.
Yeah, the apology from Oz.
In the early hours of 2:35 a.m., January 6, 2023.
Yeah, I don't doubt that Blair was definitely aligned to Oz and being incredibly manipulative, and I know she was financially abusing him at least towards the end. Up until once he's assigned, I would say once the moment she gave him money as as part of a debt was where she started switching over to the financial abuse. Everything up until that point, I would say, was up on Oz for the most part. But as soon as she started giving him money, is where and then locking him into these weird like contracts. That's where I would say the financial abuse actually did start. But at the beginning, though, I'm gonna still stick with it was most likely on Oz. Just taking on a bunch of debts that he shouldn't have taken on, and that was his own personal choice. But once he started taking money from Blair, it became a different scenario because she started creating these weird contracts with him.
I was highly skeptical, which I made note of, but I listened, and as we began to talk once again, we started to connect the dots and find so much context that had been left out between us. I was still very much on edge with my trust, but over the last few months, Oz has made countless efforts to prove not only to me, but to every other former Sad Milk member that he truly was sorry for the role he played in anything that took place. It shows a tremendous amount of...
Yeah, Blair did a very good job of getting them all to fight against each other while she tried to pretend to be the one that was the victim in the whole scenario.
Strength, and Oz will always have my respect as a person for what he has done. I don't blame him for his role. He was in an abusive situation and had every reason to fear Blair. I feared her too for a very long time. For over a year, I watched one of my best friends slowly wither and question everything and his work ethic for his beloved channel fade away. After everything came out, I now understand why this was the case. So to watch tears flow from Blair for 3 minutes after knowing what will always remain behind closed doors between those two, it personally sickens me. At the end of Blair's video, she has what appears to be a heartfelt cry regarding your friendship. This section is rough.
That was bad. That was so bad. She is such a lying piece of shit.
Roughly 3 minutes. She goes into detail
Allegedly.
about you, Casper, better times, and involves hobbies, etc. Would you like to share your thoughts on what you felt or thought when you first saw this?
There's not really a nice way that I can actually say this. I've watched her build those tears up on multiple occasions, whether it's she forgot she had a prior engagement, so she built up tears and said, I have to take Casper to the vet and I'm very scared, so I won't be able to make it.
Oh, so she's a good actor. Okay, I get it. At least she's a manipulative actor. Well, I mean, that does sell a lot of stuff on YouTube, doesn't it?
Or for talking to other content creators that she's had issues with, of welling up those tears for apologies, for talking with employees, for talking with me or her roommates. It's something that I have watched her do on numerous occasions. If they were genuine, I mean, there's that, but I have a really hard time believing it with how many
The problem is some of them could have been genuine, but a lot of them probably weren't. So it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf in this case.
times I've actually seen her build those tears up. And considering when I did post my thread on Twitter and I did make the comments that I made, the tone that she had in messages was night and day. What I'm trying to say is that the tone that she had in the end of her video was not the tone that she had with me behind the scenes. The tone that she had with me behind the scenes,
Yeah, it's all about forward-facing optics, isn't it?
was very much accusing. A few vague threats were thrown in there, which I don't want to go into details on because I just, for me personally, with how I see all of this, I don't want to make a response video. This might hopefully be where my response is within the confines of your response, just because I would like to keep this. I don't want to drag out Blair and I's personal life is the best way of putting it. I would rather try to keep that as private as I possibly can, because there's a lot of things I don't think is necessary to talk about.
I've seen and heard what this individual has put this man through, and it is simply unfair to have included this section in the video. I can only hope that from here on out, Oz can find the peace and passion for not only his work, but the life he so rightfully deserves. I'd like to say one more time, thank you for everything you made right, Oz. You are generally a really good guy. So, we've reached the end of this video, and if you made it through to the end, I appreciate your patience, as I'm aware this was probably very lengthy. I hope that what I was able to provide today brought some context and clarity for anyone who wanted to know the full scope and both sides of the story that was presented online over the last few weeks. I'm not going to tell you how to view what I've said here. I'm not going to tell you how to view me. I'm not going to tell you how to view any of this story. That is not my place. That is entirely up to you to decide how you feel. Before I leave, I just want to say thank you to every single person who has been supportive and reached out to me with kind words and support over the last week. I'd like to
aside from the numbers when he was doing his initial calculations, yeah, everything was basically on par with what a lot of people have been saying over how Blair treats people at random. And there's definitely a lot of illegal stuff Blair was probably a part of, especially with that repossession. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense, especially with the difference in price. Why is there a $61,000 price tag and a $14,000 price tag? I guess it could be, in theory, a gift in one way, but what's really happening here is because Blair and Oz still have to make those payments to the car company. Oz is obviously paying more than the $588 they were taking back from Wonder. That doesn't make any sense.
Personally think my boyfriend who has helped me keep my head on straight for this entire ordeal, as I know this has also been extremely hard on them to deal with as well. So if you already can't tell, I'm exhausted. It's 5:41 in the morning. I haven't been able to sleep in roughly a week. I just want to take some time to relax, take just a little bit of a break from content, and just spend time, I don't know, just doing any semblance of life. I want to spend time with my boyfriend, or go outside, or just anything that isn't this. I just want peace and to enjoy my life. So now I'm gonna go take a hot bath and pass the out, probably get some good sleep for the first time in a week.
There you go. I mean, a lot of this is definitely showing that Blair has massive problems with keeping anyone in her circle. She's incredibly narcissistic is really what it kind of boils down to. But yeah, that definitely painted a much better picture than the overview videos I was looking at. So yeah, I guess we'll end it here. All right, have a good day, everyone.